Hello and welcome to the Kongversation. I'm Hyle Russell.
And I'm Jeff Onan.
Jeff, you said you weren't going to be back before the end of the season because we were done with the Sea of Thieves episodes. And I'm like, Jeff, you're wrong. You shut your lying, whorish mouth. You're coming back to the Kongversation. And here you are on an episode that has nothing to do with Sea of Thieves. It's about Donkey Kong Country. How do you feel?
I feel okay, except, right in the podcast, I feel okay. Like, in my life and in the context of the world, I feel as bad as maybe ever, but I feel okay. First of all, I want to say, I'm not sure there's anything that has nothing to do with Sea of Thieves.
That's true. That is true.
That? You can't see, that's something. Second of all, it's like one of those films. It's like one of those movies, like, just when I thought I was out, I was retired, and then they pulled me back in. I'm basically John's Wick, or such forth.
Or it's like a latter day Lethal Weapon, like the fourth one. You're still doing
right.
this,
right, and they're equally good each time. You're like, well, phew. Well, thank God. I was worried they were gonna lose steam, but somehow no. They still have gas in the tank.
No, Joe Pesci's still here. Now we got Rene Russo. It's great. Donkey Kong Country is also old as shit. It turns 30 years old on November 21st. And of course, we're DK Vine. We've got to do it. We've got to rise to the occasion. We've got a big 30th anniversary episode coming out on the day of. But when we think of Donkey Kong Country nowadays, it's really hard to kind of take your mind back to the early days of Donkey Kong Country fandom. So much has been accumulated over the years via the sequels from Rare, or the remix from Rare, or the Retro Studios games, or all the other games that are associated with Donkey Kong Country, or their larger DKU, and there's Sea of Thieves. You're right. It does have something to do with Sea of Thieves, Jeff. But the thing is, making these Lethal Weapon jokes, I am a relatively old man when it comes to Donkey Kong Country fandom, because I was there from the very beginning. And I don't say that to gatekeep. I don't say that to be like, my word means more because I was there when the game was launched. That absolutely doesn't. I just have a perspective that younger fans might not be able to have, because I remember when all we had was that first Donkey Kong Country game. We had to walk uphill in the snow without pants on, Jeff, to get it. Times were tough back in 1994, and I'm just joking. It was things were relatively well off in 1994, but it's weird to think about a time when Donkey Kong Country 2 didn't exist. It's weird to think about a time when we didn't have characters like Dixie Kong or Ellie the Elephant or Professor Chops to kind of name drop into the discussion and compare and contrast. And I was thinking about this in all the preparations for the 30th anniversary coming up. And, aside from the nameless drones and baddies that fill out the Kremlin crew ranks in the games, your Critters, your Clambos, your Manky Kongs, your Zingers, your Rock Rocks, all there was to the original Donkey Kong Country were 17 individual characters. 5 Kongs, 5 animal buddies, and 7 bosses. And I was just starting to think, like, that's not a lot to go off of. That's not a lot to build a lifelong passion for this franchise. And yet it was. It was. I mean, here I am. I'm living proof. Now, you pitched me lots of episode formats earlier this year. You're like, Hyle, I've got some ideas. I know what people want. I'm like that other Mel Gibson movie. I know what women want. And you pitched me, one of them was tier ranking characters, right?
No. Well, kind of. I believe what I pitched you was fuck, marry, kill.
The problem is, I want to do all 3 to all 17 of these characters.
True. Yeah, no, that's not a good podcast to be like, well, it's a 3-way tie. Fair.
Yeah. No, so you pitched me all these like games we could be playing, and I was like, it's a good idea. It's a good idea. And the only problem with doing a tier ranking is that it can get a little bit weighty, right? When you bring in so many characters. But then I thought, break it down to its simplest form. We stick to a specific game, right? And maybe we can expand this concept outwards at some point and do an episode. Maybe we're ranking all the Kongs, right? We're ranking all the Kongs on this episode, regardless of game. Or maybe all the Animal Buddies or Brothers Bear or whatever. But this is a trial run for the format, the Tears of a Kong episode format. And we're testing it out on the original Donkey Kong Country cast. So that's what we're going to do on this episode of the Kongversation.
Woo!
Woo!
I think that's what they say.
Yeah. Before we get into it really quick, I want to plug the fact that DK Vine, just like a lot of other people these days, we're on Blue Sky now. We've actually been on Blue Sky before everyone else almost. We've been in Blue Sky.
Cool.
Yeah, since mid 2023 when it was invite only. We got one of those hot little sweet invites, and we got to the little eyes wide shut party before it was open to the public. But now it is open, and it is rapidly taking off as the social media site formerly known as Twitter continues its descent into the muck. So why don't you come over to Blue Sky and follow us and follow everyone else in the community? We're having a good time over there.
Right. Come over to Blue Sky, follow Sid the Sloth, Manny the Mammoth, Diego the Saber-toothed Tiger, of course Scrat. Like, duh, that's what we're here for. We're here for Scrat. Like, I could watch the whole movie, just the Scrat bits, and they just keep making them like just little small bits and make the whole movie the Scrat bits, Have I made this joke before, Hal?
Every single time Jeff is on and I pitch our Blue Sky, I say it. The words leave my mouth. They enter the air. They go over the airwaves, and then I realize with great horror that I just set Jeff up to do an Ice Age riff.
Yeah, well, I was starting to... My Ice Age powers were starting to fade, and I just recently got reinvigorated by John Leguizamo, Ray Romano, Queen Latifah, and the whole gang announcing that Ice Age 6 is happening, and it will be released theatrically. We're not talking about some Disney Plus bullshit that's not real. Direct-to-streaming is not real. Anyway.
I'm happy for you, Jeff. I'm not happy that there's now going to be one more Ice Age than there is an official mainline Donkey Kong Country game. But I'll learn how to deal with it.
Yeah, and there's 3 more good Ice Ages than there are good Donkey... I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
Save it for the tier ranking when we compare Donkey Kong Country games to Ice Age films, okay?
That's right.
All right.
Season 14.
Of course, DK Vine, we're also on Patreon. It's how we keep the lights on in these trying times, these trying economic times. We get by solely on the generosity of our patrons because we're not making a lot from our t-shirt sales, Jeff.
Are we not? I mean, I am. That's a little inside joke because Hyle, who doles out the money like our little, boss / pimp / man, he knows that about once a month I get a check for 30 cents. And by a check, I mean it goes to my PayPal.
So,
and
yeah, how it works is we usually get maybe $1 for every shirt we sell on TeePublic, and then if someone has contributed the general idea for one of the shirts, like Jeff has done for several, they're entitled to 30% of the cut, or 33% of the cut, excuse me. And basically, it's just like, if you do the like entire like design, like Cameron and Dustin have done for several of the DK Vine logos or album artworks, they'll get the entire proceeds for that. But if it's just like the idea, like, hey, do Jurassic Park, but it's Diddy Kong Racing. Hey, do Pink Floyd, but it's Donkey Kong. Then you get 33% of that, and Jeff gets a really insulting paycheck.
It's fun. It's not. It doesn't make me mad at all when I get an email that says, "Hey, Hyle Russell just paid you 33 cents."
Yeah,
doesn't bother me.
And then the rest just go in the DK Vine's coffers, which are used for site renewal or renewing our firewall in January, so the AI scrapers can't get us again. Good times. Good times.
It does bring a good point, which is that if you want to support DK Vine, if you want to support the Kongversation podcast, buying a t-shirt is cool, but getting on our Patreon is the way to go. We're going to get more money. We're going to get more money. And by we, I mean Hyle. And by Hyle, I mean the website.
I'm living in squalor right now, Jeff. It's not like I'm Ebenezer Scrooging it into my little vault here. It's
hey, okay, quote unquote squalor, as if you expect every house to have 4 walls.
That's right. I mean,
kind of entitled.
Donkey Kong, the whole reason we're doing this, doesn't even have a door. So,
ooh,
yeah.
He puts his stuff in a cave. I can't even knock that. I wish I could put my stuff in a cave. That'd be sweet.
One of the perks of being a DK Vine patron for $5 and up a month, you can listen in on these live conversations. Hear all the technical difficulties as they happen. We edit those bits out to make it look seamless. Hello to Giga Strike. Hello to March Rose. Hello to Freezer, hanging out in our live stream right now.
Yeah, we've got people. Human people. Fans, friends. Humans, probably. I don't want to assume.
Not on the Kongversation. We sometimes hope they can be intelligent primates in the zoo, taking over their zookeepers and computers.
Maybe what's the guy? Maybe James Franco tried to cure Alzheimer's for John Lithgow, and he accidentally turned the apes smart, and then Caesar, etc., are typing away on DK Vine chat, like the film.
Yeah, or it could be like a really intelligent yet mostly undiscovered North American forest ape who stumbles into maybe a cabin owned by John Lithgow, for example. Some sort of hairy type mythological creature, and they sit on the computer and they're like, "Oh, what's this? A Donkey Kong podcast?"
What are we doing?
We're saying hi to Me Muppet, who also joined us in the live stream. Anyway,
hey.
DK Vine on Patreon, plus support DK Vine and the Kongversation, so I can get a fourth wall. Jeff,
that's me.
You're back. It's still season 12 of the Kongversation. Where is my catchphrase? Where's my slogan?
Right. Okay. I almost forgot about this part. But for context, for everyone listening in the future, for example, when this goes live to the non-patrons, the patrons are going to get it early. That's a perk. Give us dollars. Come on. Give us dollars. But if you're not a patron, you're going to get it later. And if you're just someone who's never heard of the website, you might be listening to this in the year 2030. I don't know if internet will still be around then, but the thing we're doing this season 12 of the Kongversation, the thing we being me and me being Jeff is doing is every episode that I'm on, I come up with a slogan or a tagline or a motto or a catchphrase for the Kongversation podcast because it doesn't have one. It doesn't currently have one, and it needs one because I know that from having a brain. So I try to come up with one every episode, and I don't think about them ahead of time, so that's why I'm stalling while talking. But here it is. Okay, so DK Vine's The Kongversation. It's finger listening good.
That's, if this is the last episode of season 12 you're on, that's ending on the highest note possible, Jeff.
Right. Well, that at the end we have to do an episode where we do a tier maker ranking of all the motto slogan catchphrases that I came up with. And then the one that we choose will be official.
Yeah.
And we'll use it every time. But Hyle, we've done the business, we've done the preamble, we're about to get into the real thing, but I don't want to get right into the real thing. I want to be eased into it. Wined and dined. Why don't what do you call that?
Foreplay.
I can't count that high. I was stuck on.
Jeff
I was
only
stuck
gets
on
up
three.
to 3 play, and it always ends a disaster for him.
Yeah, so they're like, "Oh, I'm still cold play. Heat me up." But I just say before we, how are you?
I don't need to reiterate how I am on every episode of the Kongversation. Throughout November and December. I'm about the same as you are, Jeff. I'm about the same that Dustin was. I'm about the same that Josh Wallen was. We're all just hanging in there, aren't we?
Right? Yeah, that's true. I mean, I'm okay. I went to the movies last night. I haven't done it in a while.
What'd you see?
Which is like a comfort thing for me. Venom 3. Which is the third entry in Venom franchise. Which I liked it. I was surprised they didn't put Tom Hardy on it. He was in the first two. This one, kind of a left turn. It was basically The Rock and Chris Evans were trying to save Santa Claus had been kidnapped. It was weird. It was a left turn. I'll give them that. But overall, probably like a 10 out of 10.
All right, Jeff. I'm patting you on the head right now, letting you know it's going to be okay. And
it's going to be okay.
If you could bring that critical eye to the Donkey Kong Country cast, we're going to be in for one hell of an episode.
We're doing it.
Yeah, all right. We're doing it.
And we're about to make some tiers. TIERS.
Yes, it's the episode format title is called Tears of a Kong, which is a pun. It's actually a reference to the Smokey Robinson song, Tears of a Clown.
The people who don't know shouldn't get to know.
Oh, yeah, okay, I'm sorry. Well, the thing is, we make a lot of references here, and a lot of people don't know what the hell we're talking about, so they just think we're dull. They don't know that we're clever, and I feel like sometimes we need to remind them, actually, no, we've got a lot going on. We're just speaking on a different language, the language for boomers mostly.
Yeah, no, Hyle and I are usually just kind of trading references back and forth to bands from the 1970s that don't matter.
Yeah. Ambrosia.
But I don't think we... Hey! All right. Bread. So... This could be the whole... It's interesting that you said an A one and I said a B one.
Yeah.
Is this an episode? We're gonna go A to Z with the?
Oh no, we can't do this. We can't do this. No.
We can't do cream. We can't do cream. But what if we instead did an episode where we put the characters from Donkey Kong Country 1 for the Super Nintendo back in 1994? We take all those characters, we put them in a tier list. For example, like you would find on tiermaker.com. Is that the name of the website?
It is. So here's the thing about Tiermaker, for those who don't know, and if you're online in any fandom adjacent community, you'll probably know what this is, or at the very least have seen this before. This is a standard internet tier, which it's, I think, modeled after the Japanese, grade school system of grades, because here in the States, an A is the highest letter grade you can get. That's exceptional work. Good job, little child. You got an A on your paper.
Exceptional,
right. But in Japan, the highest letter is an S. And so S tier, which you might see as a term bandied about, that is superlative. That is just the best of the best. All right. So A is still there, but A is slightly lesser than S. And then, it goes down B, C, D. It sometimes stops there. For our purposes, I've added E and F to our little tier maker chart for these 17 characters. And here's the big sticking point of this episode, Jeff, and this is what's going to get us into trouble with our listeners. Okay? Yeah.
Okay.
And I didn't really discuss this with Jeff when I pitched it to him, when I said, Jeff, do you want to be on this episode with me? And yes, Jeff initially pitched the general conceit of doing a tier-based episode to me months ago.
But when I said, should we do hot or not?
Yeah, right.
That was what this was.
And I said, Jeff, it's not 2005 anymore. That would get us into trouble.
Yeah, and they're all hot.
I mean, like I said, fuck, marry, kill. Yes, yes, yes. Because I would feel shame after each one, and I would want them to die. But I would want to, I'd want to experience it. And I want, experience it more than once, hence the marry. I'd want to, buy the cow and then get the milk at the ready.
What?
So, here's the thing, Jeff. We can only judge the 17 characters from the original Donkey Kong Country based on their role and how well they performed that role in the original Donkey Kong Country alone. We can't say like, well, K. Rool, I loved him in Donkey Kong Country 2. I love where they took his character in Donkey Kong Country 3. Donkey Kong 64, that's some great shit. Oh man, K. Rool in the Donkey Kong Country cartoon show is why I tuned in every week. K. Rool is my main in Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. None of that matters. Get that out of here. Get that knowledge out of your brain, because we are taking it back to November 1994. Imagine we were doing this at November 28th. 1994, 1 week after Donkey Kong Country had come out, and somehow we invented podcast. Okay?
And I'm 1 years old.
Yes. Imagine that Jeff was artificially aged by enchanted waters in the forest, and he develops into the fully formed Jeff we all know today, but without the knowledge of modern day Jeff, but with enough knowledge to do a podcast about a video game that just came out that Jeff somehow got and beat, despite being a 1-year-old in an adult Jeff's body.
Right, which is canon.
Yeah. And it's a perfectly logical conceit to hang an episode on. No, I want to do this because, like I said, there's a lot of accumulated knowledge and lore for Donkey Kong and Donkey Kong Country in the 30 years since it came out. But I want to judge everyone solely based on the merits of that first game and that first game alone. Zero future knowledge. And that's going to piss people off because, there are characters like Squawks or Candy Kong that definitely grew beyond their role in the first game. But that doesn't matter for this episode because we are judging them based on that first game alone.
Let's do it.
That was the Quiznos Toasty.
Remember when those were fucking everywhere and now they're not? They're nowhere? Weird.
Yeah, weird. It's
they had a baby as a mascot. This is crazy times.
So Jeff, we prepared a tier maker list. Creating the Donkey Kong Country (1994) characters tier list. Okay?
Yes.
So
that's what we're gonna do.
We are gonna start with the bosses of Donkey Kong Country. We're gonna have a debate for each one, and it's not gonna be like our list up episode where we're gonna have different opinions and we're gonna hear each other out, but then we're gonna move on. We are gonna come to a consensus, and a relatively quick consensus, because this doesn't matter. Not really. This is just for fun. But we are going to debate the merits of each character in that original game. What they bring to the role that they have been assigned, and how much they elevate the experience of the game itself. Okay?
Yes.
Okay. And we're going from S
Okay.
being the best and F being a complete fucking failure.
And I wanted to point out, and I didn't discuss this with you ahead of time, but the on the tier maker, the letters S, A, B, C, D, E, F, those can be edited, and we can, if we want to give them names, if we're okay, F tier isn't just F tier. F tier is it's I don't know. We could I'm gonna push you out of your comfort zone. You're gonna tell me no each time, and each time I'll be like, yeah, but maybe. And we'll be like, hey, well, this is the tier for the. Instead of calling it D, we could call it forgettable, or instead of calling it S, that might be exclusively the Diddy Kong tier. We don't know. We'll find out as we go. And if you want to fight me on that and push against me, I'll probably back right down because I don't have a lot of fuel in my tank right now. So I'll probably just let you win the argument. I don't even know. We'll see what happens. But the point is, the letters S through F, sequentially, which doesn't make sense, but does, it's a construct. We're humans. We can make it up. Make it up as we go.
Yeah. Okay. So let's start with the very first boss of the game in the Congo jungle, Very Naughty. Jeff? Very Naughty. Yep. So, like I said, we're not going to bring in appearances in later games, Very Naughty Racing. We've got to judge poor Very Naughty based on his performance in Donkey Kong Country. And, the absolute worst boss in not just this game, but maybe the worst boss in any video game ever.
Yeah.
Not great.
Okay.
Not great.
Not great. And this is interesting because now we haven't prepared. I haven't thought about this at all.
Yeah.
I've done no thinking. I've done no preparation. I'm shaking right now. Now that I'm thinking about it, I'm like, okay, as a character, how is he? But also, the role in the gameplay, there's so many angles. There's so many angles to approach this from. Very Naughty is dumb.
Yes.
Because, Hyle, of more than one reason. One of the possible reasons is that as a boss fight, which is the function of that character, mechanically, it's not interesting or engaging or challenging or fun. It's just kind of whatever. I kind of get maybe the logic of the first boss should be easy, but I don't know. It's probably too easy, right?
Mm-hmm. Probably. Yeah, no, it's definitely too easy. It's not engaging mentally or physically. There's no satisfaction to be had from it. There's just a large beaver kind of hobbling around and you have to put it down.
Yeah, I think that the difficulty progression from boss 1 to boss 2 to boss 3 to boss 4, there might be some logic in that if those things existed in a vacuum. But I think if you played 5-6 levels of the platforming game and then played Very Naughty, then the difficulty curve there doesn't make any sense. Very Naughty is too easy and sucks.
Yeah.
So you have that. you have the mechanical function of it. He doesn't serve it that good. But then you also just have, is he interesting as a character, as a story, as a narrative? No, it's just a big version of a Naughty. I don't like it.
It's kind of pathetic. It's kind of pathetic and demoralizing. So I'm gonna put Very Naughty. I'm gonna suggest, because we have to come to a consensus, but I'm gonna suggest Very Naughty F tier.
F tier, yeah. And for the record, the tiers here, we're talking on the scale of Donkey Kong Country characters.
That's right.
You're running from a range of the lowest to the highest. We're not going to be like, we love Donkey Kong Country, but we can't say every single character is a C tier or higher, because then why would those other tiers exist? We're talking within the context of Donkey Kong Country. What is the lowest and what is the highest?
Yeah. And a lot of people, when I announced this episode, said, Hyle, how are you going to be critical? You love Donkey Kong Country. You love all of this stuff. And here's the thing. If Joe Blow came up to me on the street and started bad-mouthing Very Naughty, I'd punch him in the throat. Because nobody bad-mouths Very Naughty unless they're within the family. It's something we can do, right? But if somebody else comes at me and says Very Naughty is everything that's wrong with Donkey Kong Country, they would be on the floor very fast because I would put them down just like I put down Very Naughty. And I think you have to keep that in mind. I absolutely love Very Naughty, but if I'm being critical, if I'm being honest, among these 17 characters, Very Naughty is F tier because he fails at everything he does.
I agree.
All right.
And if that sort of sets the definition,
yes,
of F tier, in my opinion. So we'll see where everything else goes, but I think that is a pretty solid. Sometimes you have to be careful. You don't want to start right out the gate with an extreme. You don't want to start with the top extreme or the low extreme because then there's nowhere to go from there. But I feel confident that you and I are probably not going to want to go lower with anyone else. We're probably not going to go lower than Very Naughty. So we'll put him in F tier.
Well, yeah. I think it's just a good, it's a good icebreaker. Get all the negativity out first, which Very Naughty did, because there's nowhere to go but up from Very Naughty.
Yeah. Hey, and you know what, by the way, just as an example, this isn't set in stone. If we get to later in the episode and we're like, this character is clearly a full tier worse than Very Naughty, we can move.
We can
move him.
Hey, here's the thing. I will make the completed tier sheet available for everyone like when this episode goes up. It'll be there for your own research purposes. You can look at
post it
on the toilet.
Right. When you're going to the bathroom.
Yeah.
But we're gonna post it. We're gonna post it on Blue Sky right alongside Crash and Eddie and
Jeff.
Ellie.
Jeff, we need to move on.
What?
To the second boss.
We're moving. We don't stop moving. But Hyle, I was gonna say this because I don't think we should go through everything boss, and then animal, and then Kong. We have to jump around because we have to keep the people's interest. They're used to TikTok. They're used to flash and jump, and we can't just, going so sequentially is the wrong move. We can't go sequentially.
I like things to be very, very ordered and precise, and it's why my foreplay is always so successful because they know exactly what's coming.
You love that I push you out of your comfort zone. So
here's my only criteria. I'm willing to walk on the wild side with you, but here's my only caveat. We have to save Donkey Kong for last.
We'll save Donkey Kong for last.
Okay.
We'll do that.
Right.
But if you're going to reference walking on the wild side, I'm going to remind people to Google Jack Link's Jack Link's beef jerky, Bigfoot pissing. Google that.
Right.
Just to see, Anyway. But Hyle, instead of going sequentially through all the bosses and then the baddies and then what if the next thing we talked about was another character that appeared in the very first world of Donkey Kong Country?
Oh boy.
Rambi the Rhino.
Holy shit, Rambi the Rhino. So, talking about extremes here. Now, Rambi, of course, it doesn't matter who you are or how much you've played the original Donkey Kong Country. So long as you've played it a little bit, chances are you have encountered Rambi. He's in the very first stage, Jungle Hijinks. You're going to stumble across this crate. It's not hidden. It's out in the open. And you're going to feel the power of riding on Rambi's back. And the thing about Rambi is I realize, he's the most overplayed animal buddy, but we're only focusing on the first game. Okay? And the thing is, why is he so overplayed? It's because everybody has experienced Rambi who's played that first game, but it's also because the concept of Rambi is so, like, just breaking it down to its purest essence. It's so titillating. It's so, like, tapping into that, like, childhood id, where imagine you could ride around on this powerful wild animal, and imagine this wild animal was almost like your big dog. That's the joy of Rambi. And it's part of that, like, wonderful, rare Greg Malesian design philosophy where, like, what if all of our power-ups, what if all of our accoutrements are actual characters you can be invested in? You can, like, obsess over and put on tier making charts 30 years on. Rambi is basically Yoshi, if Yoshi was a tank. And that's pretty cool.
Yeah, okay. So, first of all, get this right out of the, out in the open. Who doesn't love Rambi? Like, everything I'm about to say, I love Rambi. Also, you mentioned a detail that we have to draw specific attention to. You said that, what if this big, gigantic rhino was your dog, the family dog?
Mm-hmm.
And of course, that comes from the animations, the idle animation of Rambi panting with his tongue out like a dog. That is such a great character detail that is so endearing. It really does. It's like, okay, this is Donkey Kong's version of the family dog. And I think most people would agree that dogs are, if you have a dog, I don't, but I did, and they're like the most purely good, great, like, unassailable. Yeah,
good word.
Unassailable thing. That being said, I'm conflicted. In terms of function, I'm a little torn between whether the simplicity of Rambi and there's multiple angles to this. I'm about to describe all of my feelings. Is the simplicity of Rambi his greatest strength as a power up in the game, or is it like a weakness in terms of? My first thought is to think, compared to some of the animal buddies you encounter in the franchise, Rambi is kind of boring. When you get Rambi, you're excited, but you're less excited than if you had gotten Squitter. But the conceit of this episode is we're not considering the future. We're not considering the sequels. We're talking about within Donkey Kong Country, the first game.
Yes.
So, knowing that Animal Buddies will go in more interesting gameplay directions with stuff like Squitter or Ellie or anything, you have that. Those things have to be outside of what we're ranking. They're not part of it. But even still, is Rambi boring? I'm not sure. I'm not going to say boring in terms of he's below C. Like, let's just say for conversation that C is middle.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that Rambi is below that when I say boring, but I'm saying does the simplicity of the moveset, the abilities, does it stop him from getting to the highs? I don't know. How do I feel about Rambi? I'm not sure. How do you feel about Rambi? We just lost a viewer.
Well, Porygon,
literally mid-sentence.
Porygon Q says S tier podcast, but I think that was before you started in on that.
They were saying that before I talked bad about Rambi.
Okay.
What do you think, Hyle, about Rambi as a power-up, Rambi as a gameplay thing? Obviously, we love that he's the family dog, and we love that he's a rhino just visually and conceptually that's cool.
Well, first of all, can I just say that the irony being that Rambi is definitely not F tier. And yet Rambi was associated with the letter F in Donkey Kong Country for the Game Boy Colors. Little letters you could print out with the Game Boy printer. Rambi, for whatever reason, was paired with F. And I'm just like, what are you talking about, Rare? Rambi's not F tier. But Rambi, I associate Rambi so heavily with that first level where he is just perfect, right? And there's nothing finer in Donkey Kong Country than just riding back through jungle hijinks once the clouds roll in and it gets all dark and almost nighttime-y, and just riding around on Rambi in the dark when you've cleared out the stage of the Kremlin crew. It's just a very satisfying feeling. But you also have to keep in mind that Rambi has one of the weakest token mini games in Donkey Kong Country. It's not very fun, is it? And Rambi's usefulness and the level of excitement you have getting Rambi kind of gets less the more complex the levels get, because Rambi is not the most maneuverable animal buddy. So with all that in mind, how great Rambi is versus how that greatness kind of wears off as the game goes on, I would say Rambi's probably B tier in Donkey Kong Country.
Yeah, okay. Here's where it gets interesting. And again, we can move him. If we settle down, then we're like, wait, no. I'm trying to think ahead of what characters are going to be above this and what's going to be, I don't know. It's hard to know. But what I will say is the bonus game with the tokens.
Yeah.
On the one hand, gameplay wise, it's not good. It's not effective or efficient or whatever. However, the snow level is visually really when I was young and I didn't know anything, I wanted to get the Rambi tokens because I thought running around as Rambi in the snow was just visually really cool.
Sure, okay.
And I enjoyed the setting and the visual of that. And then on the other hand, I forgot. Oh, the other point I was going to make was, and this is a big one. Rambi can jump on top of the zingers.
Oh, well, okay. Yeah, you've convinced me now. Rambi should be A tier.
No. Wrong. Because okay, let me back up. You thought he should be in B tier, initially. And I didn't say this, but I thought he should be in C tier. However, the zinger element of it, bouncing off the zingers, so one, useful, but also two, exciting because you so rarely have the opportunity to be able to jump on zingers, and they're typically seen as I think of the zingers as one of the most dangerous enemies, that the most imposing enemies. Just emotionally, they're scary. But the fact that Rambi can bounce on the zingers, that's great. I think I talked myself up to a B, but I didn't mean to talk you up to an A. What are you thinking now? Are you?
Oh, I'm thinking Rambi's an A. I think you're being too judgmental on the poor guy. I think that
I don't know. I just think there's a lot of distance between B to F. There's 3 whole tiers in the middle, and maybe B is right where he should be.
Look, no. Okay, we can put him in A if he does something problematic. We can always move him down to B. But I think right now A tier is a perfectly fine place for Rambi to call his home.
All right. Well, I promise I will talk faster on some of the future ones because we're already, we're spending time. But my thinking is that Rambi ought to move down as we go, not because of anything Rambi that's wrong with Rambi, but just because I want there to be enough headroom above Rambi for the stuff that I think is better. There's going to be more stuff coming.
There's 15 more characters.
I think that there is going to be characters that are 2 tiers better than Rambi, which is why I don't think Rambi should be A tier.
Mm-hmm.
But let's just move on. We'll come back to it. Let's move on. Hyle, why don't you pick the next character that we're going to rank?
All right.
Jump around. Feel free.
We'll jump around. So, okay, well, we did a boss. We did an animal buddy. Let's do a Kong. Why not? And let's just start off with
Donkey Kong.
No, Donkey Kong is last. Let's start though with his better half, or I mean, that's up for debate. Candy Kong. She runs the save points in Donkey Kong Country. She is one of only 2 female characters in the game that we know of, and she is a big, voluptuous, tall gorilla who kisses you, who does the little blowing kiss on you. What do you think of Candy Kong, Jeff?
And again, reiterating for our audience that we're only looking at Candy Kong as she appears in Donkey Kong Country 1.
Yes.
For the Super Nintendo. No future material whatsoever. Hyle, I really can't find anything good to say about Candy Kong. I think that conceptually, there's nothing great there. It's like, oh, okay, Donkey Kong has a girlfriend who is sexy. Is like the that's the idea behind it.
Yeah.
Then the execution is it's a gorilla, so that's off-putting and odd.
Okay. So let's just break this down really quick. Because Candy Kong basically is modeled in that first game to look like a 1950s pinup calendar girl, right? So
yeah.
That's weird.
Not very feminist. Well, not very feminist.
No. When you look at the 3 Kong helpers of the original game, they're all piss takes in different ways. They're all just very one-note archetypes. And again, we're not looking at later games because I would say that Cranky and Funky both quickly grew. Sometimes within that first game as very nuanced, deeper characters than just, haha, here's an old man, haha, here's a surfer dude. Candy didn't have that opportunity. But even in that first game, I don't think there was much there. And I kind of get the point of Candy Kong because look, Donkey Kong has this sexy girlfriend, still a gorilla. Because, I mean, this Donkey Kong doesn't, abduct Mario's girlfriend. He's not into humans. This Donkey Kong, he's not a sex pest. But at the same time, Candy is she's a gorilla with human proportions in a bathing suit, and it's weird. There's really no getting around it. It's just there's not a lot there, and the only thing that's keeping me from putting her in F tier is the fact that you can turn Donkey Kong around and have Candy blow a kiss directly up his butthole. And that's pretty great. That's top-notch game design right there. So that makes me say, Candy's has a little bit more going for her than Very Naughty. Candy at least serves a fun functionality. And also, it's as backwards and dumb as having to save your game at specific designated points feels from a modern perspective. It was pretty much the norm in 1994, and I appreciated having a character there to facilitate it. It's oh, let's go visit Candy. It wasn't let's get to this point so we can save our game. It was let's go see Donkey Kong's sexy girlfriend. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, okay. I think I was initially feeling F tier. You might have convinced me only in the sense that maybe F tier is reserved for things with nothing to them. And if you can find any redeeming anything, then it should be E tier. Also, Candy Kong reminds me of Candy O, the album by The Cars. And the album art features a woman essentially in the same outfit.
Yeah.
So we like The Cars. We like Rick Ocasek, our IP.
We love it. We're pro Cars here on the
Pro Cars.
Yeah.
That's right. We are. Yes.
We love we love all the hits. We love Shake It Up.
Yeah. Hello Again, My Best Friend's Girl.
Mm-hmm.
The Rest, Heartbeat City.
Yeah. So the point is, like, I can't say Candy's completely without merit because it was important to make that distinction that, like, Pauline, that whole stuff is being left in the past. Donkey Kong is a man with his own taste, and his own taste are gorillas. So her own agency as a character was like null and void. But I'm still glad she was there. I'm not saying like Donkey Kong Country would be improved if she wasn't. It would just be great if she had, more to her than gorilla hairy tits.
Yeah, I don't know. I could not say that the game is improved by her being there, or that I'm glad that she's there, but I will say that I'm less unglad that she's there than very naughty, maybe?
Yeah.
Let's move on.
Let's
we'll
put her
in
E tier.
E.
And the funny thing is, I uploaded all the renders to TierMaker. Candy's render is so tall that the only thing that shows on TierMaker are her breast and her crotch. So
it cuts off the head and it cuts off the feet, which, those are the parts I care about.
It looks like one of those
I care about a lady's mind and what she has to say and what her feet look like. I'm a feminist.
It looks like one of those silicone sex toys that is just the.
Ugh.
You know what?
It's really the sex doll things. They really creep me out.
Yeah, where they don't have a head.
I'm not a fan.
Yeah.
I'd rather just talk to girls. I don't know.
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah. So I'm just saying though. It kind of sums up everything about Candy in that first game, right? The way the render was arbitrarily cut off there.
Yeah, I think that having the idea that Donkey Kong has a girlfriend and she's a girl. That's dumb and lame and like empty. It's very empty. But then you're going to make her sexy, and that's like an empty thing to do. And then you're like, oh, the sexy, empty female character. We're going to make the only action animation she does is that she blows kisses. I feel like that is just the one step too far.
Yeah. I mean, to be fair, it's probably more restrained than Donkey Kong 64, where she makes blowjob jokes.
Yeah, well, we don't talk about Donkey Kong 64.
We don't talk about it. I'm just saying, though, yeah, it's just, like, the series quickly found its footing with more positive female representation. But...
Yeah, they should be old and then die.
I was thinking Dixie, but yeah, Wrinkly's pretty great, too.
Yeah. We like Wrinkly. She's fun. Let's move on.
Yeah.
We really have to move on. There's so many characters. All right, okay. We're going to hit the speed round at some point, but not yet, because... I get to pick the next one.
You do?
We've settled into these rules. And the next one, I'm jumping. I'm just gonna jump. We're gonna do. Okay. We have to get some bosses out of the way because there's too many bosses. There's so many. How about we jump right back to? We did very naughty. Let's do really naughty.
Oh, we're just getting the beavers out of the way.
We have to compare. Oh, really? Okay, because of Candy. Interesting. Well,
no. Okay, you put those words in my mouth.
You said beavers plural. You said beavers plural.
Yeah, very and really naughty. I wasn't referring to...
like, I thought you were saying very and Candy and really naughty. I was like, whoa, all right.
That's TierMaker's dysfunction that they cut off Candy where they did.
Okay, all right. I would never say the word beaver.
I like Candy for her mind, okay?
That's almost also not feminist. Really naughty. Let's just jump right into really naughty because we can compare.
And he jumps right in.
Conversation.
He jumps in too.
He does jump, don't he? I want to ask you right now, do you think that Really Naughty is on a different tier than Very Naughty, or are they just the same? Are they
No.
both F tier?
No, Really Naughty is a Very Naughty who at least tries. He puts in the barest effort. And
Because his fur is different colored.
his fur is different color, but he also jumps higher, Jeff.
Okay.
He poses a little bit more of a threat, and I would say he's everything you'd want in a jumping beaver boss, which isn't much, to be fair. But I think Really Naughty is the ideal of a giant beaver who jumps at you, which again isn't much.
Well, let me ask you this. Is the adjective really is it a tier better than the adjective very? Like where do those words rank? What is the meaning of those words? I'm not sure. Because if someone said this is very good or if someone said this is really good, I don't know if I know the difference.
I think
where are we on those?
I think very is more succinct, where really requires you to stretch it out a little bit more, and that just means you're more committed to it. So if you eat like a tasty dessert and somebody's gonna be like, how is it? And you would say, oh, it's very good, or you would say, oh, it's really good. And that's what I think of when I think of the large, naughty bosses in Donkey Kong Country.
Okay, all right.
So,
well, okay. So you're saying you're gonna put them in E tier? That's what you're thinking?
You know, I would even be good with D tier, but I think E tier is probably where you would want to put Really Naughty, and I want to defer to you, Jeff, being the aficionado of giant beaver bosses that you are.
You're the expert on the word really. I'm just trying to picture. Man, is there such a gap between Really Naughty and Candy, and then an equivalent gap between Candy and Very Naughty? I don't know, man. They're all on the bottom. They're all bad.
I think Really Naughty and Candy Kong, they're bosom buddies, beaver buddies.
Yeah, let's put them in E.
Yeah,
E tier.
E. Yeah.
E for everybody don't like them. Also, we can rename the tiers. What if F tier? What if can we call that garbage tier instead of F? Then we all know what it means.
Fucking garbage tier.
Or we could call it garbage, like they say down south. Garbage. By down south I mean Boston,
yeah.
which is south of New Hampshire.
Everywhere is south of somewhere, really.
Right? Yeah, it's garbage. Yeah. Bahaba. I don't know. Boston. Maki Mako Paktika. Let's call it garbage tier.
All right, I'm starting to call it F tier, but you can pretend.
I'm not pretending. I wrote it on the document. Okay, so we're putting Really Naughty in E tier, which is less garbage.
Yeah.
Just Andre says that very sounds formal, but really is when you're feeling genuinely impassioned. That's our live stream chat. You can join our live streams if you back us on Patreon.
Yeah, you can.
Yeah.
You can.
Yeah.
So
Hyle, what's the next character?
Jeff, I'm still in a boss mood. I'm really into the bosses right now, and I'm tired of talking about beavers though, and thankfully that was our last one. I'm in a tube state of mind right now. Just a big,
okay.
elongated tube of boss. You know what I'm saying?
Aren't we all?
Yeah. So I'm thinking about the second boss. Because we talked about the first boss, we talked about the fourth boss. I'm thinking about the second boss of the game. In Monkey Minds, because you fought the beaver, and that wasn't very impressive. And you were like, what else does this game have to throw at me? And here comes a big old bird neck, Master Necky. And Master Necky, he's just you don't see the rest of him. He's just a large bird head and bird neck, and he spits coconuts at you, as vultures are known to do in the wild. And I think Master Necky is a lot more successful as a boss than Very Naughty, or Really Naughty. if I'm perfectly honest. I think Master Necky, being that he's a fucking weirdo, and like really, just a neck. That's what I'm fighting as the second boss of the game. Okay, I think that's a good, solid C tier of a character.
I was gonna say B, and I'll tell you why.
Oh.
You might be right. We might settle on C. Master Necky, you're right. We are going to settle on C, but the Master Necky as a boss provides two things.
Yeah.
One, the challenge of the level is it's present and it's like appropriate for that point in the game. The bouncing on the tire to avoid the projectile coconuts. It's like a good little boss fight. It's nothing special. I think that everyone in the world sort of agrees that the boss fights in Donkey Kong Country mostly are not that good, or not particularly impressive. But it's functional and it's appropriate and it's fine. But I think that the visual spectacle of Master Necky works in a way that really Naughty doesn't. Something about just the drone enemy Naughty is not threatening, or I don't know. It's just not. It's fine. It's whatever. A giant Naughty doesn't matter. But when you get a giant Necky, you're like, oh yeah, okay, that could be scary. A giant Necky would be cool. And then you just get it's very giant. It's just a giant head peeking off screen, and you have to sort of imagine the rest of it. That's pretty fun. Actually, whoa, I just remembered. Some of my friends in a Discord chat had just posted pictures of ostriches at the zoo. And I pointed out, this is just a little sidebar, Hyle, but this is for you. The audience, you guys can tune out. Hyle, for you, I'll tell you. When I go to the zoo, there's at the zoo, if you stand at the like sort of to the side of the ostrich enclosure, there's like a fence or a hedge or something, so you can't see into the ostrich enclosure all the way, but you can see their necks peeking up. You can't see their bodies, but you can see just their necks. And I like to picture that their necks are just like weird long worms, and that enclosure has the weird worms. Those are ostriches. They're just weird worms. However, that's essentially what Master Necky is. So we agree it's B tier? No.
No.
You think it's C tier?
I think it's C tier, and you just have to keep in mind though, Jeff, there is another Master Necky to come. So
right, like Star Wars, there is another. Yeah, no, I agree. Master Necky has to be C tier because it will be improved upon.
It will be improved upon. This is just Master Necky 1.0. There's a better one. There's a better update
They're
coming.
Edging us.
Right.
All right.
They're edging that big long tube of bird neck.
I did like that you called it a tube. When you start calling it a tube, you're like, oh, well, let's talk about a boss that's shaped like a tube. My brain went to a different one, and we'll get to that one as well. But before we get to that, it's my turn to jump around.
It is.
I want to talk about, I'm really jumping on you. We're going to talk about Expresso.
I know, because you just
talked about a bird.
Yeah.
And then we just talked about an ostrich. So we're going to talk about Expresso. Expresso does not look like a worm. Expresso has a body. Unlike Master Necky, has a body.
Expresso is fully formed, has all the working parts, a wink. And Expresso, I think, Expresso is kind of a mixed bag, isn't he?
Yeah.
Because Expresso... kind of counter to Rambi. I would say Expresso maybe has the most fun of the animal token games, and probably the one you're going to play the most throughout Donkey Kong Country. When you get that third token, you're like, crap, I'm being pulled out of the level. It's always a little bit softer of a landing when it's Expresso's game, because you can get more tokens in that. And it's just more satisfying to run around and jump over the wall and get the big golden Expresso token. But then Expresso is also kind of hindersome a little bit. There is a little bit of a realization that sets in when you finally get Expresso, and I believe Orangutan Gang is when you first get Expresso in a level itself, and you realize, oh, I can't really do much with Expresso, can I?
Yeah. I think that's the Expresso is the anti-Rambi, in that Rambi is maybe in retrospect not super interesting or exciting, but like pretty obviously useful, and you can bounce off the zingers and stuff. And then Expresso is like, oh, this is cool. I can sort of hover glide and do this and that. And then on further inspection, less useful than you think, because you can't jump on nothing. Expresso is like disappointing. Expresso sort of gets replaced by Dixie Kong a little bit in the sequel.
A little bit.
Like,
yeah. And again, like, we're not talking about later appearances. I know Expresso's a lot more satisfying in Donkey Kong Land. Donkey Kong Land doesn't matter here.
And Banjo Pilot.
Banjo Pilot, I know, everybody's favorite character in Banjo Pilot. But it doesn't matter. We're just looking at this first game. And when you look at what each animal buddy brings to the game, and when you realize, when you finally get to play as Expresso or get to ride Expresso in the actual levels themselves, and you realize, oh, I should probably ditch Expresso because I'm just gonna run into an enemy and I'm gonna lose Expresso anyway. Or, it's disappointing. And so, yeah, I would say Expresso, definitely not like the lower tiers. Like, I would say Expresso still brings more to the game than Candy or really Naughty. But,
I think C.
You think
I'm feeling C.
So you just want to stick the long bird necks together is what you're saying.
I might. I may have. Only because I'm trying to think ahead of what goes above. There's plenty of room for things above C.
Yeah.
And there's plenty of room for things below C.
Okay.
I don't think Expresso is low tier, but Expresso is not high tier.
I feel like D would be too harsh for Expresso. And
yeah, does it feel that way? Yeah.
It seems a little bit mean too, because this is Expresso's like biggest role. I mean, yes, Expresso Racing and the Game Boy Advance version of Donkey Kong Country 2, but I mean, just as far as like getting in the thick of the action, this is it for Expresso. And
the more I think about it, the less I like Expresso. Right now we have nothing in D tier. We have, in our E tier, we have Candy and we have Really Naughty. And I think Expresso is definitely above those.
Okay.
Do I feel strongly that the boss fight of Master Necky is better than the Animal Buddy Expresso? I don't feel strongly, but I might think that is right. That Expresso is right in the middle of there.
I think they're equitable. Like, I think as far as
we'll put in C tier.
Because here's the thing,
we can move it later.
Yeah, we can always move it later. But I think that the Animal Token game elevates Expresso to C tier.
Now, yes, the Animal Token game, you've convinced me, because I wasn't thinking about that. And I do like the Expresso Animal Token game. Yeah, it'll put in C tier. But I argue that C tier essentially is renamed to Condor. What's a word that means long-necked birds? It doesn't have to start with a C. C is
Cranes.
for long-necked birds. Yeah, okay. I'm changing it. Our fourth tier down, there's S, A, B, and then the next one is neck birds, and then D, and then E, and then what did I say F was? Garbage. All right, cool. I think I'm really feeling good about this episode. Everything's going good, and you agree with it. So cool.
All right, Jeff. It's my turn, I believe. And you know what? Let's bring some more fur into this. We got some feathers. Let's get some fur back into the mix. Let's talk about another Kong. And the Kong I want to talk about, Funky Kong. Now, Funky Kong, of course, in the original Donkey Kong Country, he runs Funky's flights, which is a very arbitrary way of gating the game, right? I mean, it's just, you can't go back to previous worlds unless you get to a Funky's flights, and then Funky will rent you his airplane, and you can fly back. It's one of those gameplay conceits like save points. It's like, why are we doing this? If whatever, okay? Because the character of Funky Kong, he's just an early 1990s surfing dude, right? And like the whole like California surf culture that was really big in maybe the late 1980s, but early 1990s in the Americas. I don't think it reached the UK until a little bit later. So it was still like in vogue in 1994. By 1994 in the States, like we moved on from California surfing dudes to
skateboards,
grungy Seattle baristas, right? Like,
yeah,
it like the culture had already shifted. So Funky already seemed like a throwback to us in the Americas by the time Donkey Kong Country came out. And that kind of, in my mind, sort of elevated him all the more. It wasn't just like cashing in on a fad or just like trying to appear relevant to the kids. It seemed like a deliberate, almost like cheeky, like a couple years out of step kind of character. I think Funky's great in the first game. Like I think, of course, he would grow to become a more interesting character as time went on, but I think he was pretty entertaining and amusing in that first game. Just the sheer existence of a character named Funky Kong. Like, what the hell? Like, it's easy to forget. 1994, like, you going into Donkey Kong Country, you just had Donkey Kong and Donkey Kong Jr. as concepts. And here, like, okay, and now here's Funky Kong. Like, that's absurd. That's absurd that happened.
You don't have to convince me, Hyle. I think that even right out the gate in Donkey Kong Country, Funky Kong comes out fully realized as a fan favorite character. First of all, surfer dude, the name Funky, the sunglasses, everything about him is cool. Then he runs an airport or something,
yeah.
Airplane that is a barrel. That's interesting, cool. But also, he surfs on a floating hover surfboard.
He doesn't in Donkey Kong Country. He does in DKC.
Oh, you're
too.
Right. That's two.
Get that thought out of your mind.
So, I know. It's hard to but no, Funky Kong's just cool. He's just hanging out with his sunglasses. I think that, especially in 1994, I knew very well because I was 1 year old. Sunglasses were a shortcut. A very effective shortcut to understanding this character is cool. Not just understanding, but agreeing, like believing that this character is cool. And he was cool. That 90s attitude that I think sort of gets made fun of, like when you talk about platforming characters, like, Sonic,
classic Sonic the Hedgehog catchphrase right there.
His favorite catchphrase. 90s edgy, cool platform character became a cliche, but Donkey Kong Country kind of nails it in the it's cool in a laid back, like, I know I'm cool, not like I'm trying too hard to be cool way. And Funky Kong's the embodiment of that. The whole game has the game Donkey Kong Country has whatever the character Funky Kong has. It's the play it loud,
Right.
like coolness. Funky Kong's the embodiment of the whole game. So knowing that we can't factor in future stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, he's A tier minimum.
A tier minimum, but here's the thing. Here's what pushes me over the edge for Funky. If Funky was edging me, this is what finishes me. I think we talked about we can't factor in future games and how they developed this character and evolved him. The thing is, he was already running an airport in this game. Like we focus on him being a surfer dude, right? But that element of him being a mechanic, of him like having a little bit more going on under the surface that would be fully explored in later games, that was already planted in the first game. And they did run with it later on, but it was already there. And so the fact that you had this effortlessly laid back, like, really cool character who didn't try, as you said, to be cool. He just was. And he's
right.
also like, he's got some intellect there. It is like, he chooses to be a laid back surfer dude, but he's not just like defaulting to that because of lack of options, right? He's intelligent. He's got his own little business. He's kind. He's compassionate. He's helping out his bros. I think Funky is S tier. I'm gonna say we can always move him later, but I think Funky is cream of the Donkey Kong Country crop.
Funky Kong is in what we're currently referring to as surf tier.
Surf tier,
which is the top tier. So
it is.
Funky's in surf tier. We have Funky at surf tier, Rambi in A tier, which stands for A Rhino. B tier is nobody. Then we have the neckbirds. Neckbirds is a pun on neckbeard.
Fist Tap also suggests tube tier.
Yes, I actually have incorporated that onto my list.
Okay.
I put neckbirds, parentheses, tubes. Nobody's in D tier yet, as in don't put anybody here. Then E tier is just called E tier, and it has Candy Kong and Really Naughty. And then finally we have Garbage. Garbage tier is very naughty, and I'll be surprised if anyone joins him there. But Hyle, it's my turn to pick the next one.
It's your turn.
It's my turn. And the next one, I want to talk about another animal buddy because I want to hear what you think. Let's talk about Winky the Frog.
Now, we've already had an advocate for Winky in the live stream chat. I believe Freezer threatened us if we don't put Winky in S tier. So we're like I said, there will be tiers about these tiers.
Oh, TEA.
Yeah.
RS.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hyle, I want you to tell me what you think about Winky, and at that point, I will then tell you why I want Winky one tier higher than that. So you hit me with the Winky stuff.
I'll hit you with my Winky stuff, Steph.
Be careful. Edge me. Let's go.
Be careful what you wish for. So, Winky to me, when I was a kid, Donkey Kong Country, we talked about Rambi. You know, Rambi being such a cool character, like the family dog turned into like this wild safari animal, right? Winky was every kid's dream because here's a giant frog. You know, the like, when you're a kid and you're soaking in all this, like, rainforest stuff, I don't know if you did that, Jeff, but, like, when you learn about the rainforest in school or whatever, and...
Right, the cover of the National Geographic... What were the... No, not National Geographic. What were those magazines for kids with the animals on them?
I know what you're talking about. I know what you're talking about. Was it Ranger Rick?
But you can't remember it. No. It was like a whole series of...
Oh,
and there was just each one was like an animal on the front. What were these? Let us know in the chat if you know.
Let us know in the chat.
It was like these nature magazines aimed at kids. They were educational. Each one just had an animal on the front. Oh, I can't remember what it was, but you know what? We'll come back to that. Tell me more about rainforest. What do tell me what you were going to say.
So anyway, you really absorb all of the animals of the rainforest, of the jungle. And one of those animals are the tree frogs. The zoo books, Giga Strike says.
Zoo books.
That's
That's right.
right.
The 90s were pretty big on rainforests because we had zoo books and we had Rainforest Cafe, which I never went to.
Yeah, you had Rainforest Cafe, and I brought this up before. It seems like in every mall I would go into, there would be a nature store. Like a store dedicated to like naturey stuff, like the rainforest in particular, right? And there would be like they would play like the sounds of the rainforest, and you walk in, and it just seemed like the 90s was a big time for that. Like we're gonna protect the environment, and then people decided that no, actually, we're not.
Yeah, let's not. I'd never had the zoo books, but I constantly saw the infomercial for the zoo. Like, that was a staple. Yeah. That was a staple of 90s television, was the infomercial for the zoo books.
So anyway, one of the animals that you really absorb when you're like indoctrinated with all that stuff are the little tree frogs or the dart frogs or whatever. And it's like, what if you took one of those, but you made it the size of a horse, right? And like that was just the coolest damn thing. And I understand, like Steve Mails and some others who worked on Donkey Kong Country, they're like, well, Winky was a failure as a character because Winky had poor hit detection, because you didn't know if you're actually landing on the zinger or you're going to get hit by the zinger. And that's why they replaced Winky with Radley in the sequel. I get that. I do. I understand intellectually that Winky was a bit flawed in execution. But every time I came across that Winky crate in Donkey Kong Country, it was like Christmas morning. You were so excited because there he was. There was Winky. I remember I had friends, they would get a frog after they played Donkey Kong Country, and they named the frog Winky.
Wow.
Winky was such hot shit for the elementary school crowd who played this game. And maybe it's been memory hold because it's been 30 years. But for those OGs who were around for the original Donkey Kong Country, Winky was probably the favorite of the 5 animal buddies at the time Donkey Kong Country was new.
Okay. All right. Okay.
All
right. I'm processing this. We need to figure out what is going on, because first of all, I fully thought you were going to come in with a middling opinion of Winky, and I have the opinion that I acknowledge the hit detection thingy, whatever, about Winky is an issue. It's an issue. But I'm mad, Hyle, that instead of just like, I don't know, like making him control better and function better, they replaced him with Radley. Now I like Radley.
I love Radley.
I'm not saying a thing.
Here's the thing, Jeff. I love Radley. I also love Very Naughty. Right? Like this is all just a family feud. This is just,
and we put him in garbage here. So, but okay. Bar none, Winky visually, conceptually, is probably my favorite character in Donkey Kong Country. Like,
whoa!
The notion of riding on a giant, colorful tree frog with the when the tree frog breathes and the neck bubble inflates and it's just like frog. There's nothing better than that. And when I say nothing, I include gorillas and rhinos and everything. There's nothing better than a giant frog. That's cool. However, what he functions in gameplay, I think definitively that being able to jump high and bounce around is probably more exciting than what Rambi does. But then you've got the issue of like the implementation, the effectiveness of it. Like, is Winky? Man, it's a variety of factors, isn't it? But this is making me want to move some things around because I don't know. Something has to go into B tier.
Something
Right
has
now,
to go into B tier,
nothing's
but
in-
I don't think it's Winky. I think Winky is at the very least A tier. And maybe Winky would be S
Wow.
tier if it wasn't for the hit detection problems. Because yes, that does hold Winky back. But, I think when you apply that childlike giddiness playing Donkey Kong Country, you can't discount that like 9 out of 10 kids prefer to Winky. So it's just one of those things where, yeah, the devs hated him, but they were wrong. They're not right about everything. And
I think the fans will argue with us, but
Yeah.
I'm not going to argue. I'm with you. I'm pro Winky, which makes me want to maybe move Rambi.
no, I think Rambi and Winky are good yin and
don't.
yang. No, because Rambi's got the functionality, right? But
Okay,
but
all right.
Winky's got just the sugar high.
I actually, if I'm being honest with myself and you and our audience, I think maybe both of them need to move to B tier. And I'm only saying that because I'm picturing what's coming ahead.
Mm.
And I think there is something, I think there are things that exist that are in between Rambi and S tier. I think
You're just
That
coming
Rambi-
after Rambi all of a sudden. Whoa.
No, and Winky. I think that the two of them, I think both of them are good, but I think there is a tier in between them and the top. If we're thinking S tier is like perfect, great, like the best you can do within this context of this group of characters, I think there might be something that's in between them, and you can disagree, but
Okay, but
it's gonna come to a head when those things start to come up.
if that happens, we might then decide to move them. 'Cause
All right.
we can always move
All right.
them.
All
Nothing's locked down
All
yet.
right.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
Well, then we'll put Winky in A tier
We'll
with
put-
Rambi,
yeah.
and we'll change the name of A tier to Animals.
I mean,
It's
technically all of these but one are animals. Yes.
A stands for A, Rhino, and Frog. But we're moving on. And you picked. Did you pick Winky?
You
I
picked Winky.
I picked
You
Winky.
were
Why
so
don't you
excited
pick
to
one
talk about
already?
Winky. It's my turn.
Come
It's
on,
my
dude.
turn.
I love Winky a lot. He's so cute.
All right. Well, I think we need to finish off some of these bosses because we still have a whole plate full of bosses. And
Several.
yeah. And here's the thing. We just got done talking about how like all of these but one are animals. So let's talk about the one that is not an animal,
Ooh.
barely a living thing. It depends how you want to define intelligence. And in its name, it's not very intelligent at all, is it? It's actually
No.
quite stupid, you might say. You might also say dumb if you go to thesource.com and you type in stupid. Because Dum Drum, the boss of Krem Croc Industries Incorporated, is the absolute most idiotic boss of the entire game. Now, I say that knowing that Very Naughty is the worst character, with the worst boss. I'm not saying Dum Drum is the worst character or worst boss. I'm saying he's the most idiotic. There is a difference there because Dum Drum is a big oil drum that spits out just regular enemies at you in a gauntlet, right? And I'm just like, oh, they're out of ideas.
I think it is probably the common opinion to say everything you just said. I think that's what people tend to agree. But I'm not sure that that's what I think. First of all, I think visually this giant steel oil drum shaking around with its glowing red eyes and the skull, I think it's interesting. It's imposing. It fits the aesthetic of the factory world.
Oh, for sure.
It fits that world for that reason. And then, like, okay, gameplay wise, very uninteresting, nothing special. I'm not going to defend that. However, like, the notion that one of the boss fights is just a gauntlet of enemies, That's never going to be the most interesting boss fight, but it is an idea that makes sense to do. It like I'm fine with it. It probably comes too late in the game to be as good as it could be, because if that was an early boss, that's like, oh, you've faced two worlds of levels. Now can you do a gauntlet of enemy types? That would make sense. But then after you've made it through like 5 worlds or whatever, that's not the time to do that test.
No, but
so
yeah,
I'm conflicted.
Okay, Jeff. Even though I just got done saying Dumb Drum is just stupid as a character, sometimes something can be so dumb it kind of veers into brilliance. So I really like this idea that there is just this oil drum or like this toxic sludge barrel that has been like grafted with AI or some sort of intelligence. It's got the glowing red eyes, right? So there's something going on there. There's a flicker of cognition, and it just has a bunch of gremlins and armadillos and what have you just wedged inside of it. Like they're all huddled up tight. Like, is it my turn? I'm going to drop down now. And I just like that visual of like a clump or two, just like spooning each other, like, trying to make it all work. Maybe they have little handles they hold on to, so when it like tips upside down, they don't fall out until it's their turn. Just thinking about that kind of stuff is what I did in like early 1995 when I was really into this game, and just like, how does it work inside of Dumb Drum? What goes on? Like, what's that workplace comedy like if you're like working inside the Dumb Drum? And that's the kind of stuff that sticks with you. That's the kind of stuff that elevates the world of Donkey Kong Country from just a video game you played when you were a kid to a lifelong passion. And I think Dumb Drum, like, again, we're not factored in later games, but Dumb Drum would start
all of his future appearances.
But Dumb Drum would start the pattern of there being one boss in Donkey Kong games that wouldn't be an actual like a living animal or Kremlin or whatever. It would be just this object taken from the games and ballooned up to this cartoonish proportion. And so like when you compare it to Cleaver and Belcha, like yeah, maybe they're like Dumb Drum is the weakest, but when you just factor in that first game, I think Dumb Drum is interesting in a way and unique enough that I would put him at a solid D tier, and that D could then be turned into the Dumb Drum tier.
Okay, well, my first thing is I love that you've just tacitly endorsed that I'm changing the names of the tiers. That's fun. I feel like I've just impressed Dad. The other thing I want to say, you said the word cognition. You said that Dumb Drum has some sort of cognition, and I can't hear that word without telling this story because I have a couple of friends of mine, very close friends for many years. My friend Martine and his wife Leslie, good people. They come over to my house every other week to play board games with me, and they're good people. They're my friends. My friend Martine, I've been good friends with him since the 4th grade. But Leslie, by the way, everyone, she just had a baby 2 days ago. Pregnancy-wise, so congratulations.
Right.
To them.
Didn't steal it, by the way. Like
she didn't just like have one like magically or like I don't know. But she did have one, and but I tell you the story. We're playing board games once, and she made some move in the game, and I didn't see it coming, and I was like it really was this. I'm not going to explain it in detail, but this big, like, whoa, I didn't see that coming. I didn't think it through. And then she tried to make this statement of yeah, you gotta think it through. You gotta use your head. But instead of saying something like that, she just, I was like, and then she just said like, cognition. And me and Martine's her husband, the two of us have been quoting that now for like 4 years. Every time anything happens, we're just like, cognition. and she doesn't like it, but it's fine. It's a little funny. Anyway, I agree with you, Hyle. And Dumb Drum is not as dumb as they say.
No.
People who haven't thought it through, I will look at them and I'll say, cognition, put them at D tier. D for dumb.
Don't underestimate.
D for drum.
Don't underestimate Dumb Drum just based on the name.
Do not drum-underestimate. We're putting him in drum tier.
Drum tier, yeah. But before we move on from Dumb Drum, Andre says, Clubba's bitterness against K. Rool totally started with him being assigned Dumb Drum duty at some point prior to Country 2. There's a prequel right there.
Yeah, okay. Actually, now that you mentioned Clubba, it made me remember that all the Kremlings' names start with a K, and so I want there to be a Kremling named Cognition. Cognition. Think it through. Cognition.
Think it through. Yeah.
Think it through. So it's my turn to pick.
It is.
It is. We haven't done a Kong, I think, in a minute. There are 3 to go. Okay, yes. 3 bosses, 3 Kongs, 2 animals. Let's do a Kong. Donkey Kong has to be saved for last. Those are the rules.
Those are the rules.
So,
you have to adhere to them.
Those are the rules. I'm going to shirk expectations. We're going to do Diddy Kong now. We're not going to do Diddy Kong later.
Ow!
People think that Diddy Kong comes later. They're wrong. He comes now. We're doing Diddy Kong.
Once you get that foreplay going, he can't help himself.
I can't wait. Diddy Kong, and again, we're not including any of the sequels. So, yeah. Diddy Kong in the sequels, he goes from being the sidekick to being the hero and having this arc and this journey, and then getting his own game about racing a tiger. So, that doesn't count. None of that counts.
none of that matters. Count. Right. For the first time in conversation history, Diddy Kong racing does not matter.
People are like, I love Diddy Kong because there's a star on his shirt. That doesn't matter. There's no star on his shirt.
Hey, now, he's not an all-star yet. He's just a sidekick in this. But here's what I'll say about Diddy Kong, because Diddy Kong quickly became my favorite character. Like, apropos of nothing else but Donkey Kong Country. And you can understand why Rare was so passionate about this design for this character, about this idea of, at first they wanted to make this the new Donkey Kong Jr. Like, he was Donkey Kong Jr. And then Nintendo said, no, too far. You can either revert Donkey Kong Jr. or you can make this a new character. And they were like, well, then Donkey Kong Jr. can go, hit the bricks because we've got something better. We've devised a better concept than what Shigeru Miyamoto came up with. And unlike their opinions on Winky, they weren't wrong. Diddy Kong is that element, that missing ingredient that really made the Donkey Kong franchise take off. And that was there in that first game. Like, just having him be the sheepish, nervous sidekick who still wanted to be a hero like his idol Donkey Kong. I think that is something that a lot of kids can understand and can therefore feel like Diddy Kong is their in-game representation. And why is he better than Donkey Kong Jr.? And why is it smart that Rare did the whole generational age up of the characters? Because Donkey Kong Jr. is a Nepo baby, Jeff. Donkey Kong Jr. did not earn it. Donkey Kong Jr. was born into essentially royalty. And
fuck that guy.
The world was just handed to him. Why is Diddy interesting? And why am I so adamant, like the later retcon, that Diddy is his nephew? Biologically, was just born into this family. Why am I so against it? It's because the core essence of Diddy Kong's character is he is this random kid on the street who said, Donkey Kong is who I want to be, and worked his way into the inner circle became this annoying like tag along that Donkey Kong didn't want to have much to do with, who just humored him at best, who earned his place, earned Donkey Kong's respect, and then his friendship. Diddy Kong is, as a millennial, Diddy Kong is the millennial poster child. Somebody who is just like overwhelmed by their anxieties. The world is stacked against them. They're probably never going to make good like prior generations did because the ladder has been pulled up, but they're going to keep trying. And Diddy Kong is, I think, the best character that's come out of Nintendo in 40 years. So Diddy Kong is S tier, and I'm not going to hear otherwise.
Yeah, Diddy Kong's S tier. I think that it would be weird to not mention Short Round from Indiana Jones.
Oh, sure. No, it's completely ripped off from Short Round. Like, okay.
No, not a bad way, not a bad way. But I want to be, that will be the point I wanted to make. Because obviously you agree. Short Round from Indiana Jones is the best Indiana Jones character.
Yeah.
And it's honestly ridiculous that they made 3 sequels to that movie and never brought Short Round back, especially after Short Round won the Oscar. So
yeah. I agree with you there. Like we're in agreement because there's this backlash against Temple of Doom when it came out, right? And the whiny Gen X generation, they said, we don't like this little kid mucking about our Indiana Jones. But millennials and younger who saw Indiana Jones and Temple of Doom, after we got past the casual racism, we said, hey, you know what? Short
misogyny.
And the misogyny.
A lot going on in that movie.
But Short Round is why we like that movie, because we were like, Short Round's fucking awesome. He's us. It's how you do a kid character that's not annoying. And I'm sorry that most of Gen X couldn't understand that. But then Diddy Kong came along. And what Diddy Kong was is like, what if we just kept Short Round as part of the franchise and actually like, really leaned into him. And we were like, yeah, okay, finally, we're heard. And Diddy is the best.
He's so good. Yeah, no, Short Round's good. I like those movies. You can go back and listen to our podcast episode about the Kongversation that is Indiana Jones themed. Google it. But Diddy Kong's S tier. That's it. S currently stands for surfs and sidekicks.
Short Round.
Surf and Short Round. Surf and sidekick. I don't know. S as for the Suicide guys. And they're, Funky and Diddy currently S tier. Hyle.
Jeff.
I chose Diddy Kong. You choose next. What's it gonna be?
What's it gonna be indeed? Well, okay. So, we gotta get through these bosses. I'm sorry. Like, I feel like I'm the stern taskmaster.
Chug and plug. Let's go.
Okay. It's time. Are you ready? Because we talked about zingers, right? You talked about what do you have to say about zingers before, Jeff? That was so fascinating that I can't remember. They're scary. Yeah. So
except only Rambi can jump on them, but otherwise
Winky
they're like
too.
Probably yes. That's true, both of them. Point being that normally you can't jump on them. They're probably the most imposing threat in the game, both in the gameplay, but just visually, conceptually, these. And the sound design, everything about them is scary. They're imposing and scary.
So what if we had a big zinger? What if we made that a boss? Like that would
be... thank you.
Yeah. And what if you don't have Rambi or Winky to help you out? Yeah. So Queen Bee, the queen of the zingers. And I think maybe the most effective boss outside of the final boss in the game. I think...
I agree.
Dustin and I just talked about Queen Bee on our Vine Valley episode. Google it, as Jeff was saying. Actually, don't, because Google is pretty much broken as a functioning search engine. Do something else.
Yeah, but there's nothing better, right? What else is there?
Ask Jeeves someone.
Actually, go to the DK Vine Blue Sky account. and scroll until you see the thing Hyle referred to. That's what you should do.
That's right. But Queen Bee, I think now again we're discounting the sequel, that there was maybe a better zinger boss fight in the sequel, but
which was nonsense. Can we agree that within the hierarchy of bees, the queen should be the most imposing, best, amazing one, and then the fact that they come out the king later, that's nonsense, right? Like, we know, you and I, Hyle, know about bees, and we know that king bees aren't a thing, and they don't matter. So that was dumb.
Yeah.
It might be the single thing that stops Donkey Kong Country 2 from being a masterpiece.
For me, a king bee is is the same kind of nonsense as a dumb drum. I appreciate it. I appreciate the ludicrous logic of it.
We've never thought about a drum ever being dumb before.
Right. So I think Queen Bee, when you get into that boss fight, you're gonna be like, I have to fight a giant bee/wasp hornet hybrid monster. And I don't have Rambi, I don't have Winky to help me out. I just have the 2 Kongs and some barrels. And not even the barrels that you can roll, the barrels that are wrapped in vines that break upon impact.
True.
Yeah. So not only is the intimidation factor there, but I think it's also the most fun and engaging boss fight out of all of them, aside from the last one, of course. It's the only boss fight in the original Donkey Kong Country that actually approaches clever design.
It's good.
It's good. It's good. Now, I'm almost loath to suggest this because it just seems like I'm trying to be cutesy.
I know where you're going.
Yeah.
I know where you're going.
So nobody's been put in B tier yet, and I'm thinking
nothing is in the B tier.
Is the reason nobody's in the B tier because it's the B tier, the tier just for the bees.
Is there any world where I would argue with this? No,
it has to be done.
We have a B. There's a B tier. The B is going, and it's called B tier. Now, I just do want to say that I agree. Okay, by doing this, by the way, it should be pointed out, that makes this our highest ranked boss so far.
So far.
Better than the other bosses that we've talked about. But I agree with that. Almost. So, yes, it is an engaging boss fight. It's good. The pace of, like, it's zinging back and forth, and it's intense, it's scary. I don't want to say 90% of it is the sound effect of the bees, but the sound effect of the bees in Donkey Kong Country is so impactful. It is a big part of it. That's the sound design is good. The sound effects of the characters and the bees in particular. When those bees are beesing around, you don't fuck around. It's scary. I don't like these bees. They're scary. And then obviously Donkey Kong Country 2 does the brilliant idea of like, well, we know you're afraid of the bees. They're scary. Let's do an entire level archetype where you're inside the beehive, which not just is conceptually scary and visually interesting, but also gameplay-wise, you're sticking to the honey hives and climbing up the walls, and that's amazing. These guys are brilliant guys, but we're not talking about Donkey Kong Country 2. We're talking about Donkey Kong Country 1, and in that game, the bees are scary, and one of them is very, very big.
And
so
it's the queen.
That's scary.
Yeah.
It's the queen. So B tier.
Yeah. Isn't it weird though that the the most successful lady in the original Donkey Kong Country is the big bee?
Yeah, that's one of those weird quirks you get when the game doesn't have any women in it.
Yeah.
It's like, 2 out of 17 is 2 out of 17 ain't bad. Like the Meatloaf song.
That was considered feminism in 1994, by the way.
Yeah, by 1995 they improved a little, but we're not talking about that.
Murphy Brown really helped change the tone.
Hyle, the next one, we're on the boss train. Let's stay on the boss train because I want to talk about another B word, but not a mean one. Not a bad B word. A good B word. A bird. B word can be abbreviated to bird if you want to save time.
Sure.
And the bird I want to bird.
The
bird I want to bird about.
The fact that you have to explain it every time, though, are we really saving time?
Every time I say bird, I let people know by that I mean B word. And the B word I want to talk about is the word bird. And this bird is Master Necky Senior.
Senior, right. Which is just like Master Necky. Master Necky Senior's son. But a little older, a little wiser.
That they should have called it that when you first get it to the second world, and you're like, "What's the boss of this world?" And it should say Master Necky Senior's son.
Or they should have called it, "Please, Master Necky is my father."
Master Necky Senior is great because it's everything we like about Master Necky the first fight is true. But now you have two of them, which is just conceptually and visually cool. But also the fun lore detail of one of them is the father and the other is the son.
Well,
Senior, Junior
again,
is just a funny thing
You only
to put
fight
on it.
Master Necky Senior by himself in the Super Nintendo version.
Oh wait,
the GBA version.
they don't do both.
No,
Oh.
it's the GBA version where you get the father-son duo, father-son reunion, like the Cat Stevens song.
Damn it! Yeah, it's not time to. Okay, don't get me on a Cat Stevens thing. I forgot what I was gonna say. No, you're right. Okay, only one bird at a time. That's the rule of Donkey Kong Country 1, as we know. That's our meme. That's our community slogan. One bird at a time. But Master Necky Senior is still cool because instead of being pink, Hyle, he's purple.
Right. Master Necky Senior is a Master Necky after you've edged it for a couple of hours.
Yeah.
I
in
believe,
terms of being like a pink tube.
Yeah. I believe the kids call that gooning nowadays.
Oh, God. That sounds so gross. Why do they say that?
I don't know. I'm not a kid. All right. I don't hang out in these circles.
But hey, Master Necky, we put that little dude, we put him in the I've already forgot which tier because I renamed it.
It was the C tier. The C tier.
Yeah, we put it in neckbird tier.
Yeah.
Parentheses tubes. But Master Necky Senior is the same thing, except, well, now that you reminded me, there's only one bird at a time. I'm not sure if I want it to be a whole tier better.
I would
do you think it's a whole tier better?
I would say Master Necky Senior is more distinguished, carries that air of respect that Master Necky just can't muster. Like Master Necky Senior remembers Watergate. Master Necky Senior watched the moon landing live, and I think Master Necky Senior is just the senior. Really, that's all it does. Just that's what sells it.
It is a difference. It's pretty big, but my question is, you have to remind me of this. I think I know the answer. Do you encounter Master Necky Senior before or after Really Naughty?
After.
It's after, right?
Master Necky Senior is the boss of Chimp Caverns, the last thing you do before you fight King K. Rool.
That's what I thought. Okay. I was about to say, if it had been before, that would hurt it, because it would be the first time you're getting a boss that is just a repeat of another boss.
Yeah.
And that's lame. That's lame. We don't like that. I don't like that. However, now that the game has set up that as a pattern, is it as lame? No, it's still lame, but it's not as lame. Is it lame enough to negate that the word senior is cool?
So I think weighing everything, weighing the one tube of bird neck versus the other, I can't justify putting Master Necky Senior above Master Necky, but I can't justify putting him below either.
You can. You can. I've just realized the way that we can justify it, and it's because if we put Master Necky Senior in the B tier, we can rename it to the Birds and the Bees tier. And I do think being called senior is pretty dang distinguished, character-wise.
Yeah, you've actually convinced me, because I was like, no, it has to be the same tier as Master Necky.
Right, you think it would go in the neck? It would go in the neck birds, but it's the Birds and the Bees. So,
and I realize this is going to anger people when they see this without context, and they see that we put Master Necky Senior above Expresso the Ostrich. I understand that.
He can't jump on stuff, though.
He can't jump on stuff, but you can jump on Master Necky Senior, and it's a senior. That's our argument. Yeah.
That's it. That's the game. All right. You picked that one? Is it my pick?
Did I pick it? I don't even remember at this point.
Who can know? Who can know? Let's pick
Jeff,
together.
I'm feeling generous, though. Why don't you go ahead and take the next pick?
All right. It's Cranky Kong.
Okay. Cranky Kong. Jeff?
What do you think?
I mean, look, we said Funky Kong is S tier. We said Diddy Kong is S tier. I don't see any argument that can be had about the original Donkey Kong Country where Cranky Kong isn't also S tier.
No, I don't disagree with you.
You don't disagree with me. Okay.
I'm right there.
Okay. So Cranky Kong, when you talk about fully realized characters right out of that gate, right when the game shipped, Cranky Kong was it. Cranky Kong was the thing that gave you, like, your intellectual in with Donkey Kong Country. If you were a little bookish weirdo like me who had to read the instruction manual before you played the game, you were greeted with Cranky Kong. You were greeted with Cranky Kong popping up on nearly every other page, telling you what a piece of shit the game you're about to play actually is. And then you're like, who is this old man yelling at me? What does this mean? And then you read the story and you're like, wait, this is the original Donkey Kong from the old games. And now he's an old, bitter man telling you how much you and your taste in entertainment suck. Fuck yeah, this is great. I want more of this. And I know, within the game itself, Cranky's cabin is basically dead weight. Especially when he just gives you advice for the first world and nothing but. Like, I realize that falls flat. But Cranky elevates the material so much. He carries so much of the world building within himself. And he makes the whole enterprise of Donkey Kong Country this, like, brilliant fourth wall breaking. I talk about not having a fourth wall. It's because Cranky Kong destroyed it in 1994, and I can't get it back. Cranky Kong is what makes Donkey Kong Country a funny, memorable game beyond everything else.
Yeah, I mean, arguably, Cranky Kong is even like a tier, maybe a tier, a half tier above the others, because Cranky Kong is just perfect. It's conceptually, comedically, the notion, everything, it's good. Old man character that is mean and yells at the kids is funny, but it being the original Donkey Kong character from the arcade, and that the Donkey Kong you're playing with is Junior all grown up, that concept is so brilliant and creative and clever and interesting and fun. Cranky Kong's just great. And then you add the layer onto that not is he only just ranting at you like an old man, but he's ranting in a fourth wall breaking way about video games. Oh, look at all this graphics, bro. Whatever he says, you know. Cranky Kong's perfect. He's the best one. He's top he's top tier, which I think I agree with you. We'll put him in S tier, although we have to rename it because it's currently named Surfing and Sidekicks. We have to change it to Surfing and Sidekicks and Senior Citizens. That's 4 words that start with the letter S. Because we're gonna spell citizen that way.
We're spelling citizen wrong, right?
Is. Surfing and Sidekick and Senior Citizen. And that's it. That's Cranky.
Yeah. I like Andre says Cranky is an even easier S tier than Diddy. He meets his full potential right from the start, which even Diddy didn't quite do until Country 2. And yeah, the thing you have to also factor in about Cranky Kong is that Rare took Shigeru Miyamoto's original Donkey Kong character and perverted him into this like elderly twisted monstrosity. And Shigeru Miyamoto looked at that and said, "That's perfect." And Cranky Kong became one of his favorite characters as a result, to the point where Miyamoto championed Cranky to come back when Retro took over the series. So Cranky's just a win all around. Yep.
Easy peasy. Also, I forgot to bring this up when Diddy was up there. I just wanted to say real quick that when I was a child, the number one way that I played Donkey Kong Country was cooperatively with my dad. Mm-hmm. It was the only video game I ever played with my dad. And I viewed my dad and I to have a Donkey Kong Diddy Kong relationship, and I was the Diddy Kong. And that's why Diddy Kong is also an S tier. Even if he improves in the sequel and gets more characterization, Diddy Kong's always going to be an S tier to me because he is, just like Short Round in the indie series, he's the one that the kids get to latch onto.
Yeah. And the thing is, you talk about, Diddy improves. Just like wine improves, but, you still have to have pretty good wine for it to be exceptional wine later on.
Yes.
You can't
and we also have to talk about the S tier we're talking about today is S tier with regards to Donkey Kong Country 1. We're not gonna we're not gonna lock the whole game into everything is in between A to C tier because that's where no we're talking within regards to Donkey Kong Country 1. What is the S and what is the F?
Here's the thing. If this was just video game characters in general, if we were factoring in the thousands of video game characters in existence, I would put Very Naughty above anybody from Final Fantasy. For sure.
Okay, come on. You're just asking people to be mad at you, dude. Come on.
You know what? I'm used to it. Whatever. I'll take the heat. I'll take the bullets so you can get by unscathed, Jeff, with your controversial opinions.
All right.
It's my turn.
I'm a part of this. All right.
It's my turn.
It's your turn.
You know what? Let's talk.
What?
Let's talk.
Let's
briefly, because we're going to lose oxygen because we have to hold our breaths because we're underwater. Yes, let's talk about the animal buddy, who is your aquatic amigo.
Amigo,
Enguarde.
Or, as a child might say, who doesn't know vocabulary, Enguarde.
I pronounced them Enguarde. Enguarde. Just because you had Rambi, you had Winky, so I thought Enguarde.
Expressy,
Squawksy.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, and I'll say this. I didn't know that espresso was a pun. I just thought that was the word. I thought that is also the name of the coffee.
Right. Well, and it's
espresso.
It's the commonly mispronounced version. It's what people default to. Oh, espresso. And that just seems like very next level humor for 1994. We already know the trend of how people mispronounce espresso, and we're calling our ostrich that. Maybe Rare didn't know how to say espresso. Maybe Rare were
is it a pun?
Yeah. Maybe they're just ignorant.
Yeah, but Enguarde is a swordfish. If you didn't know, if this is your first time knowing, he's a swordfish.
We already knew that because this isn't our first rodeo. But if you're just tuning in 2 hours into like the 550 some episode of the Donkey Kong podcast, the Kongversation, and you're just like, what's this all about? Yeah, Enguarde, he's the swordfish.
He is. Kyle, this is gonna be an interesting one.
You think?
Man. All right. I don't know if you feel strongly, but my initial thing was I kind of didn't like having Rambi and Winky all the way up to A tier because all the way from early on, I was picturing that Enguarde should be above those, but maybe not in S tier. And now that I'm looking at it, as we've laid it out, maybe Enguarde is in S tier.
That is bold thinking, Jeff. Because I don't know if Enguarde is in S tier. I don't know if I agree with that. Because I think Enguarde is definitely the animal buddy. He might not like rise to the ranks in your child brain that Winky does. Because when you're a kid, before Donkey Kong Country, you're never thinking, you know what I would like to ride around on is a big old swordfish. Nobody's thinking that. Donkey Kong Country puts that idea into your brain. But you're not coming into that. You're not coming into Donkey Kong Country thinking, I really hope there's a big swordfish in the game that I can ride on. Now when I play a new Donkey Kong Country game or a Donkey Kong Country game from 10 years ago, I'm thinking, yeah, I hope there's a big swordfish I can ride around on. And the game will always fail to meet my expectations. But, you know, this concept of a swordfish, I didn't even know what a swordfish was at that age, Jeff.
It's the coolest fish. It's the one that you'll see on TV that's mounted on a wall, or the marlin, wrangling a marlin. I also, in my head, I put a marlin and a swordfish in the same thing, but I know they're technically different.
They're technically different,
but they're technically the same, even if they're technically different.
But my point is, like, Enguarde is this quiet, dark horse candidate, right? Because he's a grower, not a shower. Because you realize as you play Donkey Kong Country and you go into the nearly one water level per world. I realize it doesn't actually break down that way, but that's what it feels. And you're like, okay, it's the water level of this world. Eventually, it's going to dawn on you, I really need to find Enguarde, because Enguarde is going to make this tolerable. Enguarde is going to make the experience not just this like slog of a maze full of like fish and like the mincers, the weird tires that have like spikes on them. Right.
I forgot about those guys.
It's going to turn it into this like slog that's going to take me the better part of an afternoon to beat, and it's going to turn it into an enjoyable experience, because Enguarde gives you that same level of protection that Rambi does on land, but also the maneuverability and just the extra hit underwater goes a long, long way. Plus, it's an extra hit you can get back if you're fast enough and quick enough and agile enough.
Here's what I'm going to say. I think that Enguarde has the staying power and iconicity of Rambi. If you look at the sequels, obviously Enguarde is in all of the trilogy. Rambi's not in the third one, but both Rambi and Enguarde appear in DK64 and they appear in the racing game. And again, we're not talking about the sequels. We're not talking about the future. But I'm just saying that right out the get-go from that first game, those two have this iconic status as like the two star animal buddies.
Yeah.
And between the two, Rambi has that like first level advantage. which is this thing where when people talk about what is the most iconic thing about Donkey Kong Country, the thing they're always going to remember is the first level. And that's the same with any game. You talk about it when games are put into Super Smash Brothers. Like, the stuff that's put in there is usually whatever is in the first level of a game is what's in the Smash Brothers, whatever, blah, blah, blah. The point being, Rambi has that advantage. First level makes him the most iconic. Enguarde is on that level of iconicness because of his appearances in the water levels. But if you compare the two, Rambi is like iconic in your head, but in practice, maybe not super interesting, not very exciting. They didn't bring him back for the third game because, like, what more can you do with him? But Enguarde is just like 10 times more useful. Because you might look at them and say they do the same thing. And they kind of do. Except they don't, because when you're underwater, you can't attack at all. Unless you have Enguarde.
You're right.
So they do the same thing when you have them, but when you don't have them, you can do a lot of things on land, and you can do nothing underwater. Not only is there the maneuverability angle, which is true, I don't think that on land, Rambi is more maneuverable than Donkey. But in water, Enguarde is way more maneuverable than Donkey. But then also, on land, Donkey Kong can jump on stuff and he can throw barrels at stuff. Underwater, Donkey Kong cannot do anything. So, Enguarde is, I think, far and away the most useful animal buddy. I don't think there's any world in which I would accept that Enguarde would be on the same tier as Rambi and Winky.
Okay, so here's where I'm at. It's time to make some hard, cold, calculated decisions. Because I don't think Enguarde is S tier, but I agree. You've sold me on this bill of goods you're peddling that Enguarde should be above Rambi. So I think it's time we give Rambi a bit of a demotion. I think Rambi needs to go down to B tier, and Enguarde sits next to Winky in A tier.
Whoa. I don't know, man, because I think you're... This is so interesting. It's, you know what, Hyle, what I love about you is I always don't know where things are going to go, because I have always felt in the Donkey Kong fandom that I champion Winky more than the average person.
Mm-hmm.
And yet you are up here being like, I adamantly am putting Winky on the same tier as Enguarde at A tier. And I'm like, bro, okay, I love Winky, but ooh, okay.
Here's why, though, Jeff. Here's why. I usually speak from the perspective of all of the accumulated history. So I factor in why Winky was removed from after the first game, why Rattly was his replacement. And I look at that whole history. But if I'm just distilling it to the first game, nothing else.
In the first game, Winky is the one that's annoying to control, even though he's the most cool.
Yes, but that coolness factor, like, bumps him up so far and carries so much of him. Yes.
Here's where we need to compromise.
Okay.
All right? Secretly, Enguarde is S tier. And here's why. Because underwater, you cannot kill anything, and you also have to tap to swim. But when you have Enguarde, you not only have a cool fish, but you have super powers. I think, more than any other point in any other Donkey Kong Country level, you go from the base amount of control and power to such an improvement that you are Superman. It is the single biggest jump in effectiveness of control and ability. That's why Enguarde should be S tier. And I'll tell you also, and I'm not biased, but if we put Enguarde in S tier, it does start with the letter S. If we call him a swordfish, we'd have a surfer, and a sidekick, and a senior citizen, and a swordfish.
And a swordfish, right?
Just saying. For my stupid brain, what do you think?
All right, you've sold me that we can keep the tier name consistent. So I will agree. I will agree. Like, Enguarde is, like I said, he's the dark horse, because as a kid, you're not going to go into this saying, well, clear, like, if they lined up all 5 animal buddies next to each other, and you're just like, pick your favorite. At first, nobody's picking Enguarde, but I think he's a quiet S tier. You're right.
And I do think that he's the one that we miss the most when he's not in certain sequels.
But again, we can't talk about the sequels. This has
we
nothing
can't talk
to
about
do.
that.
This has nothing to do about Tropical Freeze's most egregious error.
Feeling,
yes,
but that feeling informs how good he always was. When you realize how you feel when he's gone, it informs how good he always was, and it might speak to the fact that Rambi wasn't in the third game, and none of us cared, really, and yet Enguarde was. Maybe that in retrospect that informs how good Rambi was from the beginning versus how good Enguarde was from the beginning. I'm only saying. I'm only saying.
All right. I'm happy and content to put Enguarde in S tier. You've sold me. You've convinced me. I'm not an immovable stone.
Well, speaking of stones. I don't have a good transition for that, but I do have to tell you that the next character is another animal buddy. I think we have to talk about this with this little guy, Squawks the Parrot. And again, we're talking about the first Donkey Kong Country. Squawks the Parrot. We all know him. He's been in all of them. Squawks
is the weirdest case out of all these characters, because Squawks, at more than anyone, Squawks is the character who took that first appearance and turned it into something of a winning, like, position within the franchise. And you would have never guessed it from that first appearance, because
who would have thought?
He is such an afterthought in the first Donkey Kong Country game. And again, we're not talking about the sequels. We're not talking about how great Squawks was in Donkey Kong Country 2. We're not talking about how Squawks quickly elevated himself to the top tier alongside Rambi and Enguarde, and eventually eclipsed Enguarde. And now Squawks is one of the characters in the theme park, while Enguarde is left flopping around, I don't know, in the How to Train Your Dragon land, dying because they forgot to include him. We're not talking about that. We're talking about the first game. So I agree, like, Squawks would be S tier any other time. But in the context of the first Donkey Kong Country, all Squawks was, hey, instead of giving Donkey Kong the miner's hat with a flashlight on it, with a headlamp, like we were going to do based on the renders, what if we just made it a bird holding the light instead? Okay, yeah. That's all Squawks is in the first Donkey Kong Country. And I love Squawks. I love that there's a character who holds the flashlight, the torchlight for you. I like that. That's the kind of thing I really adore about Rare games, about their design philosophy is, hey, let's just put a character in there, because they understand that fans gravitate to characters more than things, more than objects, right? And so we gravitated to this parrot. We loved the little parrot. And then they brought him back, and we love that. But in the context of the first game, I never thought he was going to come back. Or if he did, I thought he was just going to serve the exact same function as he did in Torchlight Trouble. And then that's it. Like, I would have never guessed what the future had in store for Squawks based on this first appearance. But he doesn't do much, does he?
No, it's one level, right? Loopy Lights is no,
Torchlight Trouble.
It's
Torchlight Trouble.
Torchlight Trouble.
Yeah,
I know. I would have got there. It's one level. I don't want to, like, I'm not gonna say that. Okay, I don't like that level, so therefore I don't like Squawks. That's not the point. That's not where I'm at. And I also don't, I'm not saying I don't like that level, but it's not all that remarkable, is it? I think it's remarkable that Squawks, if you're only looking at that one game, there's something exciting about that. Oh, there's like an animal that only shows up in one level for this weird little gimmick. There's an excitement to that, but the gimmick is not all that exciting. And then he flashes your eyes and it hurts your eyes.
Gives you seizures. You don't want that.
It could give you seizures, and you don't want that. My feeling, and you can weigh in. You could disagree. I am between whether Squawks is in B tier or C tier, otherwise known as the birds and the bees tier, which he would fit in, or the neck birds (parentheses tubes) tier, which he would fit in because he's a bird. So, do you disagree that he's in one of those two? Like, would you put him in D or A or you know? I don't know. I think he's in there. He's probably either a B or a C, or is he lower?
Yeah, like if I was feeling at my harshest, if I was feeling like a stern old sourpuss, I would say D tier. But
we could. I mean, I wouldn't disagree. But
like I think there's enough going on with this design. I think obviously there's a kernel of something there. Maybe C if I'm feeling very generous, but I can't honestly, in good faith, say any higher than C.
I think you're right. I think it's not between B and C. I think it's between C and D.
Yeah.
And
And again, I just want to reiterate because I know we have some Squawks fans out there. Squawks would be S tier in nearly every other tier ranking in any other Donkey Kong Country game, at least in those originals. Like, Squawks is fantastic in those games. And as a character, as an animal buddy, one of my all-time favorites. But this is from the perspective of 1994, not 1995.
Yeah. It's not E tier because just the visual of a bird carrying a flashlight in its beak
or in its talons.
Talons. That's right. It's not in its beak.
It doesn't swallow the flashlight.
It should, though.
I mean, that would honestly put it in S tier. Like, that's Steve Mail's fault. Steve Mails, you did this to your poor Squawks parrot child.
Yeah, talons. If we put it, man, I feel like before Donkey Kong Country 2, I probably didn't care about Squawks. I honestly think I probably didn't. I could see a scenario where you'd be like, intrigued. Ooh, because the manual elevates everything.
Yeah.
The manual lists Squawks along with the rest. And that elevates, it puts, okay, this is the list. This is the list of the guys. You got and also there is the parade at the end of the game, the character parade. But if it weren't for that, would that one level matter to you? You'd be like, I don't know. What are you thinking, Hyle? Are you thinking C?
I hate to say it, I'm thinking D.
Yeah. D no longer stands for drum. I think it just stands for dumb.
I think it could stand for the dark because that's where Squawks lives.
But it also has Boss Dumb Drum in there. D for dark. D for
dumb. D for drums.
Dumb, drum, and full of cum. Let's go with that.
Squawks is young in this game. He's dumb.
We've nailed it.
I can't say for sure whether the third thing is true.
Yeah, and we're going with it then. Well, there's only one thing left because
hold on. Andre says, in the grand scheme of things, how often do we talk about Glimmer? I think that's an equitable comparison point, even if we're not talking about the sequel. If we are ranking sequel characters, where would Glimmer go in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah, I think that's the point. The point being made is that if Squawks had not had all of those sequel appearances that fleshed out the gameplay and usefulness of Squawks, if Squawks was a character from one level of a game, how often would we talk about Squawks? It would be the same amount that we talk about Glimmer, which is not much.
I mean, I talk about Glimmer every day of my life, but I also realize that I'm a social outcast.
I talk about Glimmer quite a bit on the Spyro 2 podcast that I'm also always a frequent guest on. But that's a joke that Hyle doesn't get to get. But let's move on. Hyle, you said that Donkey Kong has to come last.
I was just laughing at the idea of a Spyro 2 podcast, not a Spyro podcast.
It's not a Spyro podcast. It's just for the second game. Ripto's Rage, as you know, as we all know.
Just like, oh no, we don't like the other ones. We just focus on Spyro 2 here, on the Spyro 2 cast.
It would be like if you made a podcast about DKC 2.
Yeah.
Like, not only is it the best, but you don't even want to talk about the other ones. Yeah, so there's only 2 characters left, and you said Donkey Kong has to come last. Yeah. And that means that something else has to come last.
Because Donkey Kong is a compassionate lover.
He has to come last. Funny. What's the other one, Hyle? Just say it.
King K. Rool. I know we didn't plan this out. We didn't say, well, we're gonna save K. Rool for the penultimate pick. It just happened to fall that way.
We didn't plan it. I could have done him first, really. I don't care.
So King K. Rool, obviously, the best boss fight in the game. Like beyond just character, beyond just what he grew into, which we can't factor in. The only boss fight in the game that's really, honestly worth a damn. And I like the Queen Bee fight. I like the Master Necky fights, but you know what I mean. You know where I'm getting at, right? Like as far as like, oh, you actually have to put some brain power into this. It's the fight on the Gangplank Galleon.
Yeah. Hyle, this is tough for me.
Yeah.
Do you take the whole context of the moment when you meet K. Rool? Is all of the context, the music, the setting, is all of that part of what ranks K. Rool?
I think so. Yeah. Like I think because we were talking about Funky earlier, and part of my decision to put him in S tier was that Robin Beanland song. Hi, yeah.
Sure. Yeah. No. Well, if that's the case, you let me know if you really disagree, but King K. Rool's S tier.
You think S tier?
Even with
that
just the first
me.
game. Because that final level, the music and the pirate ship. I mean, as a kid who loved pirate ships, like the fight is so imposing, the character is cool. Obviously, the game has set up the notion that boss fights are giant versions of enemies you've already faced. Mm-hmm. So you've got a Naughty, here's a bigger Naughty. You've got a Necky, here's a bigger Necky. But King K. Rool, in essence, is that. You've faced Kremlings, so here's a bigger Kremling. But he has such a much more interesting, detailed design than just being critter but big. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, it's not like really naughty compared to naughty. King K. Rool is a design. He has a lot of personality in the way that he mugs the camera and then fakes being dead with the fake credits and then comes back. The boss fight is by far the best boss fight. It's maybe the only great boss fight. Not the only good one, but the only great one. And then the setting and the music just sets it apart for me. Like fighting him on a pirate ship with the cannonballs and then the music. It's just, I've probably played the King K. Rool boss fight more than any other Donkey Kong Country level in the whole franchise. Because I would just go play the boss fight over and over just for fun as a kid. I just play just the Donkey Kong Country 1 King K. Rool boss fight. I would go and just replay it when I feel bored.
I thought we would have a bit of a argument. I thought you were going to put him lower Jeff.
Really?
Yeah, and honestly, I wasn't even thinking S tier for K. Rool. I was thinking A tier. And
You were thinking you were gonna have to try to defend him to keep him in A tier.
Yeah, and here you are outflanking me as far as championing him. I'm completely taken back. So my only issue with K. Rool in the first game is, and I think if I was going into this more reckless, without putting a lot of thought into it, and we've actually put a lot of thought into all of these characters. It's actually more thought than I thought we were going to. My thing with K. Rool is he becomes a really interesting character with the sequels on, right? He develops the identity crisis. He kind of goes through, basically, they just make him King Koopa from the Super Mario Brothers Super Show. It's like, that's not really Bowser, right? Like, it's supposed to be Bowser, but that's not really Bowser as he is defined in the video game. So what if we just do that for Donkey Kong's nemesis? Like, Nintendo's not really using that, and it works brilliantly. But in that first game, K. Rool is almost just like, I've likened it before to just a piss take of a video game boss. He's a big reptile king with a gut and a crown and a cape, and is he really interesting in the first game? But then I start thinking about it more. The elements are there. We talk about like the elements of Funky Kong already being there, that they would then blossom as the sequels would go on. But beyond just the King K. Rool persona and, ooh, he likes bananas, and ooh, isn't he a bad guy? You've got the weird little personality tics that do kind of come through in that boss fight. There's the, like, when the cannonballs start raining down, he does the thing with his fingers. He does a little finger wiggle where he's like stimming on the cannonballs. It's like almost erotic for him to watch the cannonballs come down. And I'm like, what is that? I noticed it as a kid, and I was like, what is he doing with his hands? There's something going on there. That's interesting. And then he does the whole fake out. Like you said, he plays possum. And then he tries to trick you. He's like, yeah, you got me. I'm dead. I actually, no, I'm going to kill you. And he doesn't play fair. And then you got the whole pirate ship thing, which there's nothing about him other than the fact that he sails around on a pirate ship that would suggest he is a pirate king. And yet that's what they really lean into with the sequel. But that is there in the first game. It's just very understated. And I'm like, well, fuck. Yeah, I guess there was more going for K. Rool in that first game than I sometimes give him credit for. So, yeah, you're right, Jeff. I'll be damned. I'll be good goddamned. He's S tier.
And I'll say this much, too. As much as you might think, okay, this character improves in the sequels, that is not a reason to hold him back in this list. Because you might think, okay, if he's better in the sequels, then he's not S tier now. But that doesn't mean within the context of this game, what is the top of this game and what is the bottom of this game. Like Donkey Kong Country 2 raises the ceiling, and that's true. But the ceiling as of DKC, the S tier in DKC 1 is here, and that's where King K. Rool is. DKC 2 might raise that ceiling, but that's not what we're judging this on. Otherwise, the maximum in this game would be A tier, because everyone gets better in the sequel. So that's where he is. He's S tier as far as DKC 1 is concerned.
Yeah. I'm surprised. You've surprised me, Jeff. I thought I was going to have to defend him being A tier, and you convinced me to put him in S tier.
Well, and we're officially renaming S tier because it now S tier is named Surfer and Sidekick and Senior Citizen and Swordfish and Sovereign.
And there's your Sea of Thieves tie-in, everyone, because that's a term.
Whoa!
That's used in Sea of Thieves. Everything's connected to Sea of Thieves.
Because he rides on a pirate ship. Also, the pirate ship gets closer and closer to the thing as the games. That's fun.
And most people don't realize that. That still blows people's minds when you point that out to them.
It's one of those things that I think that maybe a lot of people do notice it, but you notice it too late. You notice it not at each step, but after you've missed 3 or 4 steps, then you're like, wait a minute, was that always there? It's cool.
It's a subtle detail. Yeah, it's nice.
Subtle detail. S tier, subtle. We have one Unomas character, and his name is Donkey Kong.
The man of the hour. The whole reason there is a Donkey Kong Country is we have to have a Donkey Kong.
The reason for the seasons.
That's right. Don't forget. In this time of crass commercialism, don't forget that Donkey Kong is the reason we're all here right now.
The war on country. We both agree. Donkey Kong, what? He's probably what? C tier? No, I'm just kidding.
No, definitely not C tier, but he's also not S tier, and that's
not S tier. We agree. Yeah, he's not S tier.
That's going to be the controversy here, because here's where I'm coming at with Donkey Kong. When we look at the S tier characters we've got, which are Funky, Diddy, Cranky, Enguarde, and K. Rool, there is like a fully realized character or functionality there that sets them apart, sets them above and beyond everyone else. Mm-hmm. Donkey Kong, I love Donkey Kong, all right? And especially in this first game, I love the way Donkey Kong is portrayed. He's portrayed as a man of the 90s. He's like one of the friends, like David Schwimmer. He is not an overly macho, kind of like he's strong, but the focus isn't on his strength or his his brute force. It's more in the fact that he's a slack ass. He doesn't really want to be doing this. He just kind of wants to be left to his own devices to masturbate in that crusty sock of his, or whatever he does in his spare time. The big sock on his bed. You know what I'm talking about, Jeff.
I know. Okay. He jerks off.
Yeah. I really like the way Donkey Kong is portrayed in the Rare era, especially the country era, because it's almost like the fact that he's a gorilla is the least important part of him. He's a guy who was a gorilla. And it's just so, droll, almost. The fact that he just, I know that the necktie is Miyamoto's contribution, but the way it looks with the Rare design, just what? You're just putting on a necktie, and you're just yeah, I'm professional. He's a gorilla. What is happening here? I like the character of Donkey Kong, and I think that the character of Donkey Kong also works really well when paired with the character of Diddy Kong. They go together so well. My only reservation about Donkey Kong is that the game's promotional material, Nintendo, Rare, they could never get their shit together and decide whether or not this is a grown-up Donkey Kong Jr. or a completely separate character. And here's the thing. If this was a grown-up Donkey Kong Jr., I know I went on this tear about Donkey Kong Jr. earlier, about how he's a Nepo baby. But I think that if this character is a grown-up Donkey Kong Jr., that makes Donkey Kong Jr. inherently more interesting to me. What happens when the Nepo baby grows up and he kind of doesn't see eye to eye with his old man anymore. And that's interesting. Plus you have that whole built-in mythology of he is the video game hero that Diddy is trying to live up to. And it would make sense that Diddy, out of all the characters, would want to emulate Donkey Kong Jr. I love that. But then you try to come at me and say, well, this is actually a completely separate Donkey Kong. He's a relative. Maybe he's Donkey Kong Jr.'s son. We're never going to really figure it out. Then all of a sudden, this is just some guy. He's not Donkey Kong. He's not even a Donkey Kong. He's just wearing the name like a cheap pair of pants. And so many people have that interpretation of this Donkey Kong now. And as somebody who was there in the trenches in 1994, trying to get my copy of Donkey Kong Country, yeah, we all thought on the playground that he was the adult Donkey Kong Jr. And the fact that this is a debate now, really lessens it a little bit for me. I mean, I'm always going to think of him as an adult DK Jr., right? But the fact that it's this muddled keeps him from S tier.
Well, and okay, I'm gonna say a few things. First,
All right.
I think that the way that the sequels go in being like, oh, Diddy Kong has to go above and beyond to prove that he is a video game hero in a way that Donkey Kong did not have to do. It implies that Donkey Kong, the star of DKC 1, already was a video game hero.
Yes.
And he was, because he's the star of Donkey Kong Jr. That is true. And whatever. It's the whole debate. It doesn't matter. But what I'll say is, all of that aside, Donkey Kong's great. We love him. He's laid back. He's kind of funny that it's this like laid back guy, but he wears a tie. There's like this, I don't know, goofiness to that. The animations with him and Diddy Kong, like playing little pranks on each other, it's all fun. He's still not gonna reach S tier for me. Not like that's not a big detraction against him. Not everything can be an S tier. If you're A tier, you're great. Like that's not an insult. But I'm just saying that he kind of is the everyman. He's kind of the vanilla. Donkey Kong is surrounded by an interesting cast of more interesting side characters, and he is the vanilla everyman at the center of it all. And there's nothing wrong with that. But he's not going to be your favorite, like, best interesting S tier guy. He's your A tier guy. And that's where I'm at with Donkey Kong. He's good. He's cool.
Yeah, I would say he's less vanilla than a lot of other like stars of video game franchises.
He's not a blank slate. He is not a blank slate like the standard Nintendo mute like voiceless Link type character. And
he's also just not the corporate like flag bearer like Mario is. He's got a little edge to him. He's not perfect. He's not necessarily like the ideal of the hero, but he rises to the occasion.
And I'll say this is that when Donkey Kong is a side character in like a cameo, he's one of the most interesting guys on the screen because it's like, oh, this like laid back. He's either laid back or he's angry or he's stupid or whatever. He's like got he's got very pronounced character traits, whether they're good or bad or whatever they are. Because he's a side character, he's allowed to be like the bodacious one. Whereas when he's the star of the game, he is inevitably the least interesting character.
Yeah.
Or not the least interesting, but like fairly vanilla. Because the side characters are always going to be the ones that are more extreme than the star of the game. The star of the game has to be a little bit straight down the center of the road in some ways. I'm not detracting from him. I'm only saying that he's more of an A tier than an S tier. Like some of the personality of the cast around him rises to a higher level because he has to be the anchor. And that is what maybe the A stands for anchor. Or as I currently have it, the A stands for animals, which you pointed out. Animals describes 16 out of the 17 characters, but that means that it is accurate.
Here, accurate also starts with an A.
Whoa. Animals. Currently the A tier has Rambi, Winky, and that's it. But I think that we're in agreement that we can't put Donkey Kong in S tier. So are we putting him in A tier?
We're putting him in A tier. Yeah. So just final results then. I think we can lock this down. In F tier, we've got very naughty.
Garbage.
Yes.
Garbage.
Yes. Very naughty. Sorry, very naughty. I would still put you above Cloud and everybody else from Final Fantasy. I'll fight for you. I'll fight for you. But just not within the 17 Donkey Kong Country characters, okay?
the Final Fantasy thing is not necessary.
It's not necessary, but I'm just trying to show my bona fides to people that I love these characters.
You show your bona fide too much, you're going to go to jail. All right, let's move on.
That's Diddy Kong Racing, Jeff. We're not talking about the later games. All right. E. Candy Kong. Really naughty.
There's no code name for E. E is E.
Yeah, E is E. We couldn't be bothered. That's just, you're not a failure. You're not a complete failure. You're not what was it? Garbage?
Garbage.
Yeah, you're not garbage, but you're
Mocky Mock, go park the shark. Whatever he says.
All right. What's the name for D tier?
Dumb, drum, and full of cum.
Yeah, okay. And that's Dumb, Drum, and Squawks.
Because Squawks is dumb, and then Dumb Drum is drum, and then the both of them collectively are.
Well, yeah, Dumb Drum's got all those cremlings in them. I'm sure they're fully loaded.
Yeah, well, it's full of cum with a K. So.
Can't wait for that Kremlin. Cognition and cum coming soon.
We've nailed it. Next up after D is C.
C, right.
Which stands for neckbirds, parentheses, tubes.
Tubes. And that's Master Necky and Expresso.
Yeah.
Yeah. Then we got B tier.
Yep.
Which,
the birds and the bees.
Which, Birds and the Bees, Queen Bee, and Master Necky Sr. And then A tier,
which stands for animals.
Animals, accuracy. And it's Rambi, Winky, and Donkey Kong.
And, animals, accuracy, and ass.
Yeah, because the render I used for the tier maker, I did use the infamous render of Donkey Kong's ass.
And donkey is a synonym
for ass.
It's
It's all connected. Like, when you say, like, Donkey Kong Country didn't have good design, I'm like, what are you talking about? It was all thought out. And then, of course,
that Greg Malesian thing, yeah.
Yeah, the last grouping here, S, stands for so many things. Stands for Funky Kong,
Surfer.
Which is a surfer.
Oh.
Stands for Diddy Kong, which is a sidekick. Stands for Cranky Kong, senior citizen. And the citizen is also spelled with an S.
Of course.
Stands for Enguarde, who is a swordfish. And stands for King K. Rool, a sovereign.
And he's also so cool.
So there you have it. You can be mad at us on Blue Sky. Don't get mad at us on Twitter. The nice thing about Blue Sky is I can just block you if you're too mad at us. And I'll never have to see it again. So, Jeff, any final thoughts on our Tiers of a Kong, Donkey Kong Country tier maker chart?
Do I have any more thoughts? I do. I think that more characters should be shaped like tubes, and I think maybe we put Winky too high.
This has been a File Tubes production.
Que rico.